Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. It's time for NewPub Talk, the NewPub show. I'm here by myself. Next week, I'm going to have Brian Niemeyer on the show. Author Brian Niemeyer, he's got another new book coming out. Part of he's got kind of a prelude trilogy that he's been doing for his Soul Cycle books, which I've read the first Soul Cycle book, and it's pretty good. It even won a Dragon Award. This guy's pretty legitimate. If you haven't seen him on the show before, we usually have some pretty good and interesting conversations about books and culture, the publishing industry, and everything else that's going on with that. So come and check it out. And I'm also one of his patrons. Like, I actually patronize him on Patreon. So I tend to put my money where my mouth is for a lot of things. So check that out. And this week, we're just going to talk about, some random topics and kind of see where the show is going to go from there. Busy day, first day back at school for everyone in my area. So that's most of the kids that I deal with in the neighborhood, as well as, I homeschool my kids, so we're kind of starting school back up again, but we never really quit starting school back up. So it's been, just do different things for educational purposes, I guess, is what I'm getting at. That's the great thing, is like you don't have to just stop everything you're doing for 2 or 3 months. Now, this is as an aside, I remember summer vacation when I was a kid was way longer than it is now. It was a whole month longer. So people that are like, man, we're going back to school, it's August 14th. Some schools go back to school like August 2nd. They go back to school in August. When I was a kid, you never went back to school before Labor Day. And only a couple school districts even had school go into June, right? So you were out like May 31st, and you went back to school September 1st. You had all of June, July, and August off, 3 months off. Now, you had summer school and stuff like that during those times. It wasn't like completely empty for most schooling activities, that is to say. But what happened? Well, we added a bunch of holidays in. And so, what are those holidays? They're in-service days for teachers, where teachers get paid for the day. They're also just holidays. There's a lot of school districts who have a whole week off for Thanksgiving. The school district I taught at in California, which Adrian's here, so he actually went to that school. They had 3 weeks off for Christmas. When I was a kid, we had 1 to 2 weeks off for Christmas, usually 2, I think. And we had a whole week for Easter, and those were the big vacation days. Then there were several kind of banking holidays we had. We had like George Washington's birthday was a Monday off. We had staff in service Mondays off, but far fewer. Now it's like the week of Thanksgiving is off. You get 3 weeks for Christmas. You get, there's often an extra week-long break somewhere in spring that's not spring break. There's like a February week-long break. Then there's spring break. Then there's all these other 3-day weekends. So it kind of shrinks that summer vacation. And this is not actually a complaint. This is actually a good thing. And it's a good thing in ways that people probably haven't thought that much about. If you want 3 months of vacation, the old way's better. But for people who are workers, it's better to have lots of little holidays. They add up to like more rest. Having a 3-day weekend every once in a while, like if you have a 3-day weekend once a month as a worker, it really helps. It gives you an extra day to do something, to go somewhere, to have like a mini vacation, or just a day to catch up on what you're doing, or just a day to rest. It really helps to have those 3-day weekends. So the kids really tend to do well with a lot of those breaks. Even a week-long break, you don't backslide as much. And then when you shrink the summer vacation, you don't have as much backslide between the end of school and the beginning of the next school year. I remember it clearly as a kid, is that the first 2 to 3 months of school were spent doing May work, doing the stuff that they were doing in May the previous school year, because all the kids, when they left school on May 31st, they were not touching a pencil until September 5th or whenever the school started back up again. They were not doing a single math problem. They were not reading a single book. So most kids did 0 academic work in between the end of school and the beginning of the school year. There were kids who went to football camp. They went to baseball camp. They never read a book, right? They went to summer camp, never read a book, never did a single math problem. So you were always spending 2 to 3 months like doing review. Now for me, as a kid, that was boring because like I was just way beyond a lot of that. We also had a system, we had a gate system at the time too, where I was pulled out of class 2 days a week. So I spent 3 days a week in a normal classroom. And in those 3 days per week, I had to do all the work for those. Then I had to do the extra 2 days of work as extra homework, right? So I had 5 days, 2 of which were just homework. Then 2 days that I went to a special school where we did advanced things, and I had homework for those too. You know, it's like I was thinking back to being like a 5th grade student, and I'd have like 4 hours of homework a night. And it was all boring, stupid. Like the advanced stuff wasn't special good homework. It was just as bad. It was just more advanced. It's like, you got to write a 5-paragraph essay this week. It's like, why do I have to write that? It's like, because you're advanced. You need to write this. You got to write a 2,000-word paper. It's like, why? Because you're in the advanced class. But I also have to write essays for the regular class. I have to do both. Yes, you have to do both. You have to do both. Anyway, it's just a funny thing. Just an interesting thing to think about is that, where it's like people are like, shouldn't we normalize like a 4-day work week? It's like, yeah, totally. We should normalize that. But actually, we should probably zoom out and be like, everybody should have 1 3-day weekend per month in every job, right? Or 2, right? So we should average, instead of averaging, 20 days in a 4-week cycle, we should average 18 days or something, right? So there's just more time off. Or if you're doing a 6-day work week, you have a couple 5-day work weeks that are in there in the month. It just does a lot for like worker mental health. I feel like teachers have way better mental health, even though they're missing the summer, right? And they have all these other holidays that are thrown in there that they're not getting paid for, but they end up feeling more energized as a result of that. Just an interesting aside. All right. So what's up, Adrian? Been a while since I tuned in a live stream. How have you been? I've been okay. We had a hurricane, knocked out the power for a week. Actually, almost 10 days. I think it was 10 days without internet, 8 days without power. But it was good. Yeah, summers were longer. Yeah, I wouldn't say you've gotten screwed, right? Like 3 weeks for Christmas is pretty great. And at Delhi, we did 3 days we did 3 weeks because we knew a lot of people were traveling on that break, like traveling back to Mexico in some cases, or just going somewhere else in the country. And they simply wouldn't, they would, like, there was an attitude that a lot of parents would just take their kids out. 3 weeks was so that, like, the first week in December, there'd be a bunch of kids that would disappear. Their parents would take them to go on a trip somewhere. First week in January, none of the kids were back. So a lot of them took a full month or more. They took 5 weeks. So that was a thing teachers were always angry about. It was like, sorry. They would say 25% of my class didn't show up for the final because they just weren't there the last week. And my response was, well, I did my final the last week in November. Well, why would you do that? What do you do the last week? It's like, we just do whatever, we just do whatever little work. We have fun. We do a little project for the last week, and people who aren't there, no big deal. I don't make it like a big part of the grade, But why? Like, why should I punish a kid because his mom wants to take him to Mexico over spring break or Christmas break? Like, why should I punish him for what his parents want to do? That seems stupid to me, so I just never did that. It's like, no. I just accepted the reality that, like, 25% of the kids are gone at the beginning of December, so finish everything you need to finish up by November. This made it really hard with music because there was always some music kids who would just disappear before the Christmas concert. We really couldn't have the Christmas concert or winter holiday concert. You couldn't do that, like, November 30th or something. It just wasn't going to fly. It needed to be December 7th. And same thing. It's like, you're not hitting it. You're not going to put a test the first week back in January. You're not hitting everybody with a test. You're going to ease into it. Yeah, summer season's hot. But you had time off, and like my parents would go on vacations and stuff over summer. I came to pass on word about the SSN data breach. What is SSN? I'm going to Google it real quick. Oh, Social Security Administration data breach. Hackers may have stolen the Social Security numbers of every American. Social Security numbers were always a really stupid method of identification. So maybe this will force everybody to change how they identify things. Right now, there's a lot of helter-skelter when it comes to identity. Like, I paid, when I bought this house, there was like this extra legal document and thing I had to fill out because I had to prove I wasn't a felon in the state of Florida. Because my name is so common, David Stewart is such a common name, first name, last name combination, that there's hundreds of other David Stewarts that have been to prison or done innumerable terrible things. And so because I share a similar name, even though my full name is pretty rare, David Van Dyke Stewart, David Stewart is so common that it's almost impossible for me to pass a credit check. Right? Like, I remember, now I didn't need the credit because I sold my house in California and bought this one for cash. Which was nice, right? Which was nice that I could just buy this with the equity. But people are like, Stu's rich. He bought his house cash. A little more to it than that, but even doing that, it was a problem. I remember having all kinds of problems. We had to do my wife for the mortgage or something because, something like that. It was like, you're a felon. I'm not a felon. I've never been to prison. I've gotten traffic tickets. I have been cited. I have been cited for my car movement before, but I've never been to prison, never been arrested, nothing like that. But someone has with my name, so there you go. Same thing. I can't get life insurance. I can't get life insurance because of my name. It's like this underwriting company will jack up the price because they say I've been to prison. That's how it is, right? So Social Security numbers have always been like a terrible way to keep track of that. If you get someone's Social Security number, hey, I could just take out an RV on their credit. Luckily, my name is so common, it just doesn't work. But anyway, I think I'd rather work 4 10-hour days and have 3 days off than work 5 8-hour work days and have 2 days off. I think I'm with you on that. Like the full day off is more than the sum of the hours that you're missing. To me, way more, right? Like that full day where you can really commit to doing something for a long period is way more valuable than the 2-hour chunks that you lose. I've noticed my writing and conversation skills have gotten much better. Good for you. I remember the classes being empty during those times. It's just how it was, and it's not. I don't have any judgment against anybody. Like, why would I care, right? That's what you value. Teachers have so much judgment over, like, this family is not doing this right and not doing that right. It's like, you don't know every detail of what that family's got going on. I just accept what is going to be there and just work within those limits, right? Rather than trying to adjust reality to your expectations, it's easier to just adjust your own expectations to reality. And that's just another one of those examples. I remember talking to the principal about that. It's like, you're going to have a lot of grief if you're like, things should be like this, rather than going, here's what I have, how can I do the best with it? I can't believe I don't have enough money for that. Well, you don't have the money for that, so you have to decide what you're going to do with the money you do have. Do you think there's a legitimate argument against school choice? I don't think there is, personally, or is it just teacher upset about being held accountable? So, there are arguments against it. I don't think those arguments amount to much, personally. So if we look at school choice, we talk about school choice a little bit. So why would someone want to change what school their kid goes to? There's a lot of reasons, in my opinion. It could be that the other school's better. It could be that it's closer. It could be that it has a program that they want their kids to have access to that they wouldn't have access to at the other school. It could be safer. It could be all of these things, right? So there is an inevitable problem that if you give everybody school choice, the bad schools, the kids leave. Now, is that a bad problem? There's no kids in the bad schools. That automatically makes them better in a lot of ways because there's just less kids in them. It's like only the bad kids go to the bad school is what you end up with. Is their experience going to be fundamentally worse than if all the good kids had been forced to go to school with them? I don't actually think it would be. There's this belief that somehow the good kids raise up the bad kids. I think it's opposite. I think the bad kids drag down the good kids, and the good kids have zero effect on the bad kids. That's my experience. Not to like put everybody in good kids, bad kids category, but you know what I mean? Like the delinquent kids tend to just corrupt those around them, whereas the good kids never convince the delinquent kids to improve themselves. Delinquent kids can improve themselves, but we have like a lot of other programs for that. So what would end up happening if you had like decent school choices, schools would specialize, and maybe there'd be a school that would specialize in delinquent kids who are academically behind, who are behavior problems, who are emotionally disturbed, right? That could actually specialize their resources in that, and you might have an efficiency increase, and you might also have better services for those kids too. But the main thing is punishing kids who are looking for a better opportunity in order to not make the school that they would go to slightly better, I don't think is a good trade-off, right? You're sacrificing the individual really to no good for the collective. You know, I don't think it's about teachers being held accountable. I think honestly, teachers are very rarely held accountable for like academic performance. There's so much that goes into academic performance, right? It's really hard to say like teachers should be held accountable, because like what does that mean? Because if you're a teacher, if I go roll into a really like a Title I inner city school, the kids are not going to perform well. I'm not going to just magically wave a magic wand and make them better students. So how do you judge my performance, right? Maybe there needs to be a school where you judge the performance on like there's fewer stabbings. That's good. That is a good thing, right? We've managed to keep the kids from physically harming each other. They have an opportunity to learn at least, and when they're safe. Swanberg is a very rare surname. That is. Stewart is very common. Hello from Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for a little over 2 years. Good times. All right. Topic number 1 today was actually talking about school stuff, right? And the work week, right? I am not a believer in working more is better for you spiritually. Some people have that belief. They're like, they call it like the Protestant work ethic, which is weird because I've never met a Protestant who actually believes this. They're like, it's just simply good for you to work. It is good for you to work on some level, but I don't know anyone who actually does that. It's like, oh, it's good for me to work hard. No, it's like, I'm working hard to get a reward for it, right? I'm working hard to have a better house, or to have a better car, or to afford more toys, or whatever it is, right? You work hard to have things. I don't know a person who works hard for like the benefit of their own soul, other than people who are artists and who are like, even then they're not valuing working, they're valuing the product that comes from the work. Like, I'm working hard to make an artistic product. I'm not working hard because I think it's good for me to work hard, like approaching it like some sort of medieval monk where like work is good for the soul. I don't know anyone who really, and that's the funny thing is like they call it Protestant work ethic. It's really from like medieval monks. It's really Catholic, but anyway, you know, it's I've never agreed with that, right? Workers, if we talk about like what's good for workers already know what's good for them, and they're going to tend towards those things which are good for them. And so a lot of the discussion about corporate culture being bad has to do with the fact that workers are being asked to do things which are neither good for them or good for the company, but are part of some sort of weird corporate paradigm where it's like, you need to come in and work in the office. It's like, why can't I do this work from home? It's like, because you need to be part of a collaborative environment. It's like people are trying to talk to me and making my work. I work better from home because there's no one trying to talk to me. I can just do my work, you know. So what's better for workers? We should look at, a company should look like, what's going to be, not, they shouldn't, they're never thinking like what's good for workers, but like what's good for the bottom line. Those two things, you're negotiating those always. And so that may be more time off. It may be 10-hour days for a shorter work week, giving you the option for more overtime on Friday, right? That could be an option too. It's like, we do a 4-day work week, and then if we need to catch up, we offer overtime on Friday. You can work Friday for pay and a half, Right, you can get overtime day in on Friday. A lot of people would do that. I know tons of people that are super happy to work overtime because it's just more money. And like, what else are they going to do with the time? They're going to watch Game of Thrones. They want to make money. They want the resources. They want to make some money. You know, so that's how I view it. I remember there were inner city schools that improved when the schools welcomed male remodels who had turned their lives around. I expected that people today attribute decision-making purely to economics, purely because they can't comprehend the idea of someone being driven by anything other than economics. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, right? And economics is really about human behavior, so a lot of things actually do reduce down to an economic exchange. A lot of things do. A lot more than we really think about. Like, there was this thing on Twitter, some notorious Twitter person who does who's a prostitute. She's a prostitute. She's an escort. She has an OnlyFans, right? This person won't date me, won't marry me. Why? Well, it's because you're a prostitute and men are not interested in marrying prostitutes. And there was a really good explanation of this from an economic perspective. It was like, this person considers themselves an objectivist or libertarian or something like that. It's like, just on the economics, why do you get paid $500 or $1,500 an hour to be a prostitute when you are doing what 50% of the population can simply do? There's no special skill required for prostitution, right? 50% of the population is equipped to do what you do. All right, and even if you reduce it down, like, okay, you know, so many that are young enough and attractive enough to do it, but men are interested in a wide variety of like attractiveness levels. So why do you get to charge so much? Well, it's because other women are not willing to do it. Why aren't they willing to do it? Because they understand the exchange that's going on. Is that you're not just getting paid for your time. You're getting paid because other people aren't doing it and have already made part of this calculation. It's like, what information is in a price? Well, it's also the not just the price for your time, but also the depreciation of your body, the depreciation of the value that you're offering at that moment. Because your body decays, you depreciate, you're giving up future opportunities to be a prostitute. Women know this. If women didn't know this, then they would all be prostitutes. But they aren't, because they know that they're giving up a bunch of future possibilities, a bunch of future value in order to be a prostitute. So even though it'd be very valuable for them, it's certainly when there's a really restricted supply to go be a prostitute, why don't women do it? It could be, you could say, well, they have morals, right? But plenty of atheist women who have like loose sexual morals are not prostitutes and won't ever do that. Why aren't they doing that? Because they understand that would make them, that would reduce the number of men who are willing to have anything to do with them on a personal level. It says a man who's willing to hire a prostitute is not willing to marry the prostitute, or he would not be hiring the prostitute. He'd be marrying a woman, right? So there's zero overlap between the men who want to pay you for sex and the men who want to marry you. Then who's left over? Who wants to marry someone who gets paid to have sex when he could find the other 99% of women who don't do that? Right? You're getting paid a lot now when you're 29 or 25 or however old you are doing this, because you're losing all of that future value. So as an economic transaction, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense why you get paid a lot and why women don't choose to do that, because they understand what they're giving up. Oh, well, why don't men? Then you have a deeper question. Why won't men date prostitutes? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but it doesn't really matter why they're not interested in dating prostitutes. What matters is that all the information for people's preferences is within that price mechanism. It's actually pretty amazing. Like, why does one thing cost more than another thing? It's, we talk about supply and demand, but the supply and the demand are themselves contain information for, like, why do people want this and why do they want it now versus later? Lots of assets are like that. Why does the price of land go up at one point and go down at another point? Well, people want it. Why do they want it? Well, they want it now because of something they think is going to happen to it in the future. There's some future utility they want to use it for, or they think it's going to appreciate in the future or something like that, right? So anyway, I think you can distill a lot of that down to economics. You don't have to, right? You could just take the regular moral approach, right? It's like, men are disgusted by that. Then why do men hire prostitutes? Men feel disgusted about hiring prostitutes, but they kind of weigh their desires. right? Men would much rather not hire prostitutes. Prostitution is itself a choice. Like being a John is itself a choice of preferences. Of like, I prefer to do this rather than something else. You know. Adrian, Gen Z says, working for the sake of working being good for you sounds like a lie told to wage slaves to make them more obedient. I don't know about that, but I've heard it repeated so many times. I'm wondering where the myth comes from, because I haven't really found it very present in like early American writing. This idea that, you know, people should just work hard. Like they have this inner built desire to just work their butt off, like work themselves constantly. I have a pretty good work ethic, but I'm driven by the results of that work. You know, I write books because I want the books to exist, not because I just feel like I need to work. Looky here, Earl. Got us one of them streamer types. The idea that a company makes decisions because of the death cult social justice types is a completely foreign concept to people. Yeah, right. And even then they may be making an economic decision. It's like, there's bad PR. I will be economically hurt as an individual if I don't use the death cult talking points. There's a lot of economic pressure. Most of it is just economic pressure, I think. People are really afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of their company losing customers. They're afraid of losing what they have in an economic sense. People who have nothing are generally afraid of nothing, right? Like homeless people are very brave. They don't have a lot to lose, and they have a lot to gain. What they want to gain is mostly drugs and alcohol, if we're being honest, but they have really nothing to lose. So they're pretty honest, and they also are willing to take a lot of risks that you would never ever take because they don't have anything to lose. People who are in a high status position or who are wealthy, they are actually easier to manipulate, I think, than poor people because they have so much more to lose. Where even a person who's like living in a 1-bedroom apartment is like, what are you going to take from me? I have nothing. I have nothing. Yeah. Hey, DVS, I heard you working on being asked to do silly things. Today I drove over an hour each way to attend a meeting that in person would have been a call. Wasted time. That's a great example, right? Why do worker preferences matter? They matter because they make workers more effective and they make workers more efficient. There's lots of management conferences that go over this. Is like, how do you get more value out of your workers? And like one of the things that they say is like, you just make work better for the worker, right? You reduce the annoying things that the worker has to put up with, and you increase the positive things that the worker gets to do. So yeah, reducing the number of meetings is big because meetings waste time. A lot of people do meetings in order to what we used to call LBing, looking busy. You want to look busy for the boss. You want the boss to see that you're doing something, so you have meetings to show that you've done something rather than just having the thing be done and reporting it to a person who matters. We have finished this part of the program. We have finished this data entry. Just letting you know. We have a meeting. We're on track to finish this by January. It's like, why did we have this meeting? It's like, I don't know. Well, so that I could prove that I'm doing something by wasting your time. Office work tends to, and this is, it's called Parkinson's Law. Work expands to fill available space. So one of the things that you'll notice, like with Twitter, is that Elon Musk cut the workforce by, I think, 70%. He laid off 7 out of 10 people. Twitter got better. How did that happen? Well, it's because work expands to fill available space. Everybody was LBing, everybody's looking busy, and all the LBing actually reduces the efficiency of the workers who are doing the real work. So that 80-20 Pareto distribution, the 80% starts to drag down the 20% who are actually doing stuff. So if you cut out the 80 that are just having meetings and wasting time and busy writing essays on their initiative and just make the site work better, you end up with a better site. And even with a DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack, there was still 80 million people that were able to watch live as former President Trump talked to Elon Musk, completely unscripted. Crazy that something like that happened. Even when they tried to stop it, Twitter was able to like respond and fix it. I don't think old Twitter would have been able to do that. People complain about the Musk Twitter. It's like technically better. It works much better than the old Twitter, especially now that things are like humming again. Apparently, the capacity to form emotional connections to partners diminishes rapidly once you approach 2 digits. I've heard this. This is scientizing a lot of stuff that we know innately. We know through cultural practice. We know through religion. So this is one of these funny things. Nassim Taleb had a word for it, but it's skipping my mind, where you research things that people already knew, right? It's like, here's my psychological research paper on this thing. And it's like, let's prove that it was grandma right to say you shouldn't marry a whore. It's like, you spent a lot of money to prove that your grandmother's inherited wisdom was correct, right? About like who you should and shouldn't marry or something like that. It's like, you're just proving right. You're spending money to try to scientize what was arrived at heuristically, I suppose. Heuristics that work, you can just rely on them to work. You don't have to think super deeply about them. And I've made this point before with lots of things. It's like, why don't you take global warming seriously? I'm like, because their predictions don't come true. That's why. And I've been seeing the predictions, and there's been specific predictions since like 1989. And none of them have been correct, right? They can't correctly predict what temperatures are going to be, how much the ocean is going to rise or go down, or what's going to happen, right? They haven't correctly predicted anything. So why would you continue listening to them, right? Why would you continue listening to someone whose predictive models have never been accurate? You should stop listening to them until they can prove to you that their predictive models have been accurate for some amount of time. That's when you listen. What are the consequences if the predictive models are wrong versus right? So that's how they get you. They try to get you with like a little Pascal's wager. It's like, what if we're right? Aren't you going to wish that we had socialism if we were right? It's like, I don't know. Maybe your solution is not going to be the correct one either. So, don't make a hoe a housewife is like an ancient, I mean, it's a dumb Americanism, but like, that's an ancient syllogism. You could say that in Latin, and like an ancient Roman would be like, oh, of course. You could never marry a temple prostitute. That would be insane. Why would you do that? You want all your sons to come out looking like barbarians? Because that's what's going to happen. Danger is one of the reasons why a lot of people, both men and women, don't get into prostitution. Oh, it's dangerous. It has risks. But you're also giving up a lot of future value. Right? Is a woman going to want to date a man who's been a gay prostitute? Probably not. They're going to be disgusted by that. Right? And there's risks that are with that too. I work to collect more and more art. I'm like a dragon hoarding gold. I got some art right here. That's original. I got some more Jesse White art. I need to put it up. Put it like right here. So it's always in the videos. Love Jesse's ink work. It's so good. A random question comes to mind. Have you ever done a video where you explain what the death cult is and break it down? Yeah, I did it in like 2017, maybe a little later, maybe 2019. Why I call it the death cult. I can't remember if you have or you explained it on a live stream before. Yeah, it's an older video. I'm sure it's like pretty suppressed because I say a bunch of bad things about people, and you know how that works, right? If you say, I just had a mosquito bite me on. The heck? Gross. Mosquito bite me on the ankle. That's great. So all homeless people are hooked on drugs and alcohol? Pretty much. The next homeless person I meet who's not hooked on drugs and alcohol will be the first one that I've ever met. And I've met a shit ton of homeless people. Saw that a lot during the peak coof years. People were all terrified of losing their jobs, so they had to take the jabs. That's it, yeah. Easy for me to say no, I had nothing going on. Husband actually sacrificed his job. We moved, what's one of the reasons we moved is not just so like we wouldn't have to get a vaccine that wasn't necessary for us, but because we were like, what's the next thing? Because the next thing's going to be even dumber than that. So we have to go somewhere that didn't do that so that they don't do the next thing that's that much worse. Versus California, where like the state canceled mass. People are like, separation of church and state. The state of California canceled mass. They just canceled church. They can do it. No one stopped them. They were afraid of the consequences. You know. So here's the thing about mentally ill. Most of the mentally ill people are also drug addicts, right? They're self-medicating. They're not like slamming fentanyl just because. These are people who are mentally ill, traumatized. People are alcoholics when they're schizophrenics because it reduces the terrible feelings they have, right? Mental illness usually goes along with addiction. Those are often very, very much present in homeless people. But when you had them institutionalized, like in a mental institution, you at least had them off the street, and if you had them on drugs, at least they were like psychotropic, doctor prescribed drugs to control behaviors and feelings, and not they're doing fentanyl because they feel so bad, right? Looking busy when you are not is an art form. Yep, it's like you're polishing the counter. You know, you want to do like the least hard thing that still looks like you're doing something. That's the LB and stuff, right? It's like I'm gonna clean the counter because I don't want to do something maybe slightly harder. Like, I don't know what. People do this in their creative work too. They'll do the dishes instead of doing homework. Or they do the dishes instead of writing a paper. Why did they do that? Well, the dishes needed to be done. So they picked an easier activity. They picked the easiest activity and they say, I was busy, I was productive, I did the dishes. But you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You didn't do what you actually needed to do. The dishes, if they sat dirty, would have had zero negative impact on you. Whereas you not doing your homework has a negative impact on you, a big one, right? Or, you know, you not doing something else that you had to do. At a prior job, there were pre-meetings, meetings, post-meeting briefings, as well as additional post-meeting briefs in succeeding months following the actual real meeting. So when I was a teacher, we had meetings every Monday. The kids got out early. Great for them. There was never a day where we weren't having a meeting because that was negotiated into the collective bargaining agreement. So because the administration had bargained for it, or because they worked it out with the union when they did the bargaining agreement, they were never letting you not have to go to a meeting, even if there was nothing to do in that meeting. They made you show up, sign in, and stay for 2 or 3 hours because you were getting paid for those 2 or 3 hours. That was part of the contract. They were never letting you not have a meeting. So there was a meeting every single Monday for 3 hours, no matter what, never skipped. Imagine if that was like if everybody was sort of at will with that kind of stuff. It's like, well, we don't need a meeting, so we're just not going to have one because there's no reason to pull everyone in. Or if you had to pay them for every meeting that you had, you'd have you'd have many fewer meetings, right? If everybody got paid $50 to show up to a meeting, the admin would have 90% fewer meetings. We don't need to pay $5,000 for our teachers to show up to this meeting right now. Yes, we're going to do the sexual harassment training meeting because that reduces our legal vulnerability, but we're not going to do a meeting where we're going to have this teacher talk about how white people are bad. I walked out of a meeting that was like that one time as a teacher. I don't remember which job it was. It's like someone had this whole PowerPoint about like white privilege. I just got up and walked out. And it's like, dude, you just walked out of the meeting? I'm like, what are they going to do to me? I'm on contract for like the entire year. They can't find anyone to fill my spot. They're not going to fire me. They're going to write me an angry email at worst. Nothing happened. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Turns out everybody was just like so afraid of a negative consequence. No one was really willing to just say like, I have too much dignity. I'm not going to sit through this. I'm not going to sit through this bullshit. Sorry. Do whatever you want to do. Another art is not getting caught slacking off. I saw that a lot in the military. I had a friend in the Navy. Man, you are sanding and painting all day, every day. Why? Because it's something to do, right? And it's like, why, if you're a seaman, why are you having to sand and paint so much? It's like, because the NCO needs to report to an officer that he's doing something. So he's going to find something for you to do, even if you're on the ship and there's like nothing to do. There's no maintenance that needs to be required. It's like, we better shore up every corner with paint just to make sure. It's like, so we have something to do. We have something to report, because otherwise, like, you're just sitting on a ship a lot of times. If everything's working, there's no maintenance to be done, right? If you're off the maintenance schedule, it's like, there's only certain things you're supposed to do on a maintenance schedule. We're out of maintenance schedule stuff. Swab the deck, sand the rails, put new paint on them. I think I saw a fleck of rust over here. Let's sand everything down and repaint it. That was apparently super, super common. I'm suffering through an entire week of meetings because the program managers want to look like they're doing something, especially since deadlines are being missed. Yep. It's to look like you're doing something. David, don't you know Elon is killing Twitter? It's going out of business any day now. I think they're actually making money. They've never made money. I think they're making money now. And Elon has even said, he's like, I'm going to run it as a business, but I didn't buy it for profit. I bought it because I love humanity, and this is the place where people have speech. This is the place where people can talk to each other in a big way. It's a huge facilitator of political and cultural speech, and he's completely right. So it's like, but why would you spend this much money on it? He's like, what else am I going to spend my money on? This is something, I think I talked about it on the blog at some point, which is because of just the way that our economy works, most of the things that you associate with rich people, you have access to, right? The lifestyle difference between a person of middle class means and a person of extreme means is smaller than you realize. You both drive a car, right? Now, if maybe you're doing really good and you have a Tesla. Is there any car that's really better than a Tesla? Someone's gonna be like, oh yeah, McLaren Speedtail. I'm gonna give me one of those. Where are you driving at 200 miles an hour? You have to rent out a track to drive it fast. You can't drive at 200 miles an hour on any roads around here. You can drive at the same speed as all the other cars. It'll look cool though. It'll definitely be a very cool looking car. But you're not gonna go any faster. It doesn't have more luxury than a high-end Toyota. It doesn't even feel as nice to drive as a high-end Toyota, probably, right? So your middle-class car is, for its functional purposes, as good as anything you can get. And you think about this like, oh, well, Jeff Bezos, he has a yacht. I want to be rich enough to have a yacht. It's like, you can go on a cruise. Why do you want to own a yacht? You have to maintain the yacht. You have to think about the yacht. You have to park the yacht. You have to hire somebody to maintain the yacht. You have to hire somebody to pay docking fees for the yacht so that you can get on the yacht when you want to and cruise around in the ocean. You could just go on a cruise ship, right? So people who are thinking like, oh, a yacht would be cool. A yacht would be cool. But on a cruise ship, you have like a professional chef, you have professional entertainment, you have a pool. There's other people around you to enjoy it with. Now, I have no interest in a cruise. But for people that are like, really enjoy cruises, it's like, this is probably a better experience than renting a yacht because it's a social experience and there's a chef. Like to replicate that is a huge amount of extra money for like very little extra benefit. So the $400 million it takes to buy a yacht, maintain it, staff it with a professional chef, it's like you're getting 80% of the quality or you're getting 20% extra quality versus like a cruise ship. So most people don't need a yacht, right? You're going to experience better things on a cruise ship with all that crap anyway, right? Cruise around the Mediterranean and then you can stop at Athens and see the Parthenon and stuff. Rather than let me fly to Europe and rent a yacht, or how do I get my yacht to Europe? How do you get your yacht? Someone has to sail your yacht across the ocean and you'll meet it there, or are you going to sail it across the Atlantic? Kind of boring. The Atlantic is really big. You're gonna sail to Africa and go up that way. It might be fun. I mean, that sounds interesting to me, but You get that idea, right? Like you can buy a plane ticket to wherever you want to go, and you don't have to rent a private jet. Jets are flying everywhere that you want to go anyway. So it's like, I want to have a private jet. Why? Oh, so because it's a certain, because rich people have private jets. Why do rich people have private jets? They're willing to pay an extreme premium for something that's like a little bit better. So they can like drink on it or like have more room to spread out. Private jets are cool. Nothing against them. But you can also just buy a ticket on a plane, because the point of being on a plane is usually to go to a place, not to be in a private jet, but to go somewhere. And since jets are flying round the clock anywhere that you want to go, you probably don't need a private jet. So when you think about it this way, you realize that like the lifestyle, okay, richest person, like let's be gamers, because I really want to talk about games. That was on the topic list today. I have a pretty nice PC. It's not top of the line or anything, especially now, but someone's like, top of the line PC. You don't have to be super, even if you're buying the most expensive top of the line gaming PC, you don't have to be super rich to buy it. But it's not like some rich person can afford a better PC. The parts are only so good, and they don't get any better than that. So if you can afford the good parts, you have the best PC on the planet, just like the richest person. So cool. You can put your 4090 in it. You can put your 13th gen whatever in it. You could put 256 gigs of DDR5 supercharged memory. You could set up your computer to be really outstanding. A rich person is not getting a better computer than you, right? And I'll tell you the truth is, like, as far as PC enthusiast goes, like the rich people that I've known don't give a shit about that. They just don't. They don't even want to think about it. They're like, no, I'll get a PlayStation 5, right? It's like, I remember one time like Dan Bilzerian bought like multiple Xbox 360s and TVs so they could play Call of Duty like sitting next to each other in his living room. He didn't buy PCs, even though they're like a million times better. I think this was like in 2012 or something, right? I'm like, Dan, I could have built you a PC that's like a billion times better than any of this. He's like, I don't want to think about it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I respect that. I want something that plugs in and goes, because I'm too busy to think about other stuff like that. So yeah, it's not like the rich person can get a better gaming experience than you. He can't. He can get the same one. So anyway, once you get to like the middle class level and up, you aren't gaining a whole lot extra compared to, the super rich don't have a whole lot of extra stuff on you. So Elon Musk, why did he buy Twitter for $40 billion? He's like, what else am I going to spend it on? I have enough money to travel wherever I want, to eat whatever I want, to buy whatever I want. And compared to Twitter, cars are cheap. I already make the best cars. I can just drive a Tesla if I want the best car. I don't need to go on a track. And if I want to go on a track, I could rent a Lamborghini too, right? It's like, I can't afford a Lamborghini. You can rent one. And they're expensive to rent. They're not cheap to rent, but they're cheaper than buying. And if all you want to do is like, I really want to get in a Lamborghini and drive around a track, well, you can save up your money and you can make that experience happen for a whole lot less than buying a Lamborghini, is my point. So rent is this great way of like taking an expensive resource and just dividing it up so that everybody can afford a little bit of it. A cruise ship, a hotel is like a vacation home that you only need to rent for one day. Same thing with an Airbnb, right? Do you need to have a vacation home? No, just stay at an Airbnb. Why would you own a vacation home? There's no reason to own that. And then you have this thing where like people will buy these expensive mansions and they just rent them out because that's more economical. And the people who want the mansion, they just rent it temporarily because they don't really want to own it. Right? They just want to live in it for a month or two. They don't really want to own the thing, or a year, whatever it's going to be. Yeah, rich people often don't buy those expensive houses. They just rent them because they just want to have it for a while, and then they don't want to maintain it. That's a waste of thought, waste of money. So they don't do it. To be fair, it can be good to scientifically prove long-held truths. On the outside, they'll appear like a waste of time. It's kind of Chesterton's fence. Like you take down the fence because you don't remember why someone put it up. Then you find out real quick when like the sheep come jumping over the hedge. Like, oh no, I shouldn't have taken down the fence. I'm at a crossroads in my life where the job I have is fundamentally worthless. My bosses are workaholic micromanagers and everyone is miserable. I'm getting ready to leave and I want to restart. I really hope that you can. This happens, you know. And I'll give you another maxim that I've picked up from a lot of people that work in the corporate environment, which is that the only way you get ahead is by going sideways, right? You can't get ahead within a company anymore. The only way to get a pay raise is to switch companies. So, you know, if you feel like you're not getting paid for what you do or you don't like your job, you just switch to another company that pays you more, because virtually all of their budget goes to hiring new people and none goes to giving raises to existing workers or promoting them. It always goes to people on the outside. So you might as well take advantage of that. There's zero desire for them to retain employees by increasing their pay. So if you want a pay increase, you just got to go to another company. And that's just how it is. And that's the other thing too, is like companies use all kinds of dumb wording like, we're family. It's family here. To manipulate you into thinking that you shouldn't just quit a bad job, or if a job is really intolerable or like you're suffering negative mental health consequences for it, that you shouldn't find another job. They do things like that because it's a way to avoid compensating employees fairly for their work. I know that's, I don't know, maybe that sounds lefty to some people, because like boomers tend to think really, it's like anything that is critical of like corporate America is lefty. It's like, no, this is way deeper than that, right? It is a truth. Nassim Taleb called employees slaves. And they want to treat you like a slave. They want to own you. And so the fear of having your salary taken away is a fear thing to control you, get you to do what you want. And they want you to feel like there's something more at stake besides the job, right? Oh, your career is going to be harmed if you switch jobs. You'll look like a job hopper. No one really cares about that, as far as I can tell. I'm not like a hiring manager anywhere, but you know, from what I gather, talking to real people, it's like, nah, that doesn't really matter. When you get hired, it's more we need your skills to do something, and we expect you to be around for a while. But if a better opportunity comes up, you know, you got it. You wouldn't leave a job after a month, hopefully, but, you know, if you have a better opportunity, take it. The idea that you shouldn't take it or you should stick it out, that's nonsense. The corporation can fire you at will. This is another thing I saw from Scott Adams. What's your job? Your job is to get a better job. So a lot of people think your job is to do this set of tasks that your employer has for you. Do these tasks. That's your job. Now, your job is to get a better job. So that could include doing those tasks. But it may be choosing tasks that will make you look better, that will look better on your resume, that will get you a letter of recommendation, choosing tasks which will build a skill which you can then use to get your next job, which is going to be better. So your real job is to get your next job. And that's a good mindset to have, is the understanding that, like, this is a job. It's something I'm doing for hire. It's not my family. I can like my coworkers. I can care about my business, or care about the business doing well, without it being more than a job, right? And then you get your next job, which will pay better and do something closer to more what you want to do. And you work your way through jobs that way until you get a job that pays really good and is really suited to your skill and personality type, and maybe you enjoy it. And even then, you may still want to trade up for that, but more money, right? So things like that. Yeah. Don't make a hoe a housewife should be obvious that many guys continue to do this, sadly. It's, I think a lot of it is propaganda. I think a lot of it's also just how bad the dating market is. As we get further into this cultural malaise regarding our inability to properly regulate sexual behavior and sexual expectations, I think you're going to have a lot more people having to look in the mirror and be like, you have to accept more damaged people, because there's no one who's not, you know. Tragically, I want to follow my original passion of working in the video game industry, but there seems to be way more obnoxious people who are devout followers of the death cult. It's depressing. So I'm not going to tell you which way to go. It's like, I wanted to work in the video game industry. What really stopped me was I am a creative auteur, and there's very few opportunities for that outside of just indie development. not just the fact that I'm like a white male writer. So the other thing, though, is that devs get worked into the ground in the video game industry. It is a really bad working situation, is my understanding. Very, very intense hours, a lot of crunch time that you just don't get in other software development fields. So if you're working if you're developing like banking software or something, right? Or doing some other kind of tech startup, it's just not as high stress as the video game industry. And the video game industry is in a contraction. So that may scare you off, but to me, I'm like, that might be an opportunity, right? It might be an opportunity to get in on the next bounce, right? To like keep your eyes open for those opportunities if you want to get in on that. And it may be better the next time around, because after there's a dip, after you clear out the bad assets, and keep in mind, some of those bad assets can be human resources. So bad employees can be part of the contraction of an industry or of an entire economy. You get rid of employees that aren't contributing, then that frees up resources for the next round of investment, and you can invest some of those in new employees that hopefully are a little bit better, right? I know that that's kind of dehumanizing to talk about employees being bad resources, like you have to disperse with them. But anyone who's worked in, I don't know, any kind of job, it's just like, that like half the people there, you could get rid of them and it would make no difference. That's a really common thing. And I think the bigger the bureaucracy gets, the more that's the case. I've noticed your collection. It's pretty sweet. I'm not sure what my collection is. Collection of what? The title is The Death Cult. Yeah. I think now would be a good time to get back into that industry as an indie. Demand might rise a lot more as the AAA crash. That's exactly my thought. So that might be the next thing that I do, as I finally like push myself to do some game development. I did a little bit of it like years ago, and I've worked kind of freelance on a couple of projects, but I'm an auteur. I want to at least do like the visual novel thing to get my feet wet. Not so much. I mean, a little bit on the programming side. Like, there's not a lot of scripting you have to do with the visual novel, but rather to figure out all the other stuff that I think is really important to success. Marketing, figuring out how to operate things in the Steam store. Like, I know Amazon, so I might have some skills that'll transfer, but I don't know how much my skills will transfer over into that area till I get to working with it and figure it out. Figuring out how to market, how to make a good Steam store page, how to get people interested in playing, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's all stuff you got to learn. Be an opportunity to learn with something that is a product I can make myself, and therefore I don't have this like heap of money that I spent to make it that I'm like, I have to get this money back. I could spend a little bit of money, like I'm going to hire an artist, that's my expense. I'm going to do everything else. Then I don't have to worry about like, oh no, I'm not making money at this. It's like, I'm not making a lot of money at this, but it's okay. Same thing with my books. Like, I can come out with a book. Like, All Shall Fall, that was a book that I figured no one would really like. There's some people who love that book, and I love you for loving this book, but I knew it's a book that's like, this is not hitting the market. This is not a book that I wrote to market, even remotely. So I'm okay if I can spend $0 getting that to market. Great. That means I don't have to sell anything. I'm in the black. When one person buys a copy of the book, I'm in the black as far as that book goes. So it's really easy, and it's easy to sell anything and like look at that as like that's contributing to the business as a whole. It's not a I have to make my money back. Do you think people have a right to be homeless, or does the state have an obligation to remove them? Ooh, what an interesting question. I think so. I'm gonna give you a politician answer. I think homelessness is a result of a couple of problems in our society. Excuse me. One of the big ones is the complete monopolization of all land resources in a way that allows no physical place for homeless people to exist. And so I don't know what kind of reform would fix that. But was homelessness a problem in 1870? The answer is no, and that's because people could live in little shanty shacks down by the river and no one gave a shit about them as long as they weren't doing anything, right? And they almost always were doing things. That's the other thing about homeless people now and probably in the past, is that they're almost all criminals. And they're engaged in criminal acts constantly, trading drugs, selling drugs, stealing things. It's the homeless people who rip out all the copper wiring at your business. It's the homeless people who rip your bumper off in the night to go hawk it for money so they can buy some smack. It's the homeless people that steal gas out of my gas tank in Modesto. What happened? Well, the buses dropped homeless people from San Francisco into the city, and then there was a massive crime wave because they're all criminals. Okay, so wouldn't say the state. I don't know what obligations the state even has. That's a whole nother debate. But the question is, from whence does homelessness arise? And it's our control over the land in a certain way, that they live under overpasses or wherever they can find to sleep, because it's impossible to squat somewhere, right? Squatting is a big problem too, but that's a different kind of problem than what squatting was 150 years ago, which was just like the dude built like a shanty shack down by the river where he gets drunk and then falls into the river and drowns eventually or something, right? So people were kind of out in the sticks doing their own thing. We didn't think of them as homeless, we called them tramps, right? Even calling them homeless gives them a certain kind of victim status. They don't have a home. Versus like street people, drug addicts, tramps, what do you want to call them? Vagabonds or something. I know this is off topic, but I did a deep dive on Gandalf the Grey. He really is a great character. I agree. He's a priest, too. I'm having an allergy attack a little bit. Reminds me of the experiment with the monkeys in the room with the banana. Never been on a yacht. I have walked onto a yacht. I've been on a sailing yacht before. That is an interesting experience, both to sail and to just be on a sailing yacht, on a real sailing ship. There's a lot of stuff on a sailing ship. It's a pretty complex machine when you think about it. All the rigging and how to do the sails, and it's a really complicated thing that they came up with. Pretty marvelous when you think about all this is just powered by the wind. Had a manager who specified technical document format and detail, like alternating headers and footers. Useless and hard to set the word processor, but made him the document expert so he could scold us. How else will you go trolling Atlantis? Billy Joel. I don't know what Billy Joel said. I don't want to be a billionaire wealthy. I just want to make enough that I generally don't have to worry about money anymore. So more money, more problems. It's hard to get to that point. Everybody worries about money because once you have stuff and you're like, okay, I have to keep paying the property tax on the house I bought. Okay. Even when you don't have a mortgage, you have a mortgage and the property tax. How do I save for my retirement? Right? There's so much stuff that demands money from you and for you to work harder and harder. It's really hard to get to the point where you can be like, I don't have to worry about money anymore. It's really hard to get to that point, especially as a family man, because you have obligations towards children and things like that. That's a natural part of life. So, I'm not trying to put a damper on it, but it's work hard, try to get ahead. Know that money is probably always going to be a concern, but you don't want that concern of money to really master you. And if you're willing to live below your means, so to speak, you can live at a lifestyle where you have extra money, that is where you're going to feel really comfortable. And I still have it, because I was poor for so long, and my wife and I both. We'll just have an anxiety about money, and it's no, we have money in the bank. Here's this retirement that we have some money in retirement, right? We're not doing great on retirement or anything, but it's if an emergency happened, we could pay for it, right? We have money to pay for things. When this storm came in and it flooded our walls and all that kind of stuff, we had the money to pay for things. We had insurance as well, but it would have been okay, right? It's really hard to get to that point, and then even when you're there, you get in this mode where you're always worried about stuff. It's really hard to stop worrying. It's really hard. Even when you're doing great economically, it's really hard to just not worry about that all the time. It's like a learned behavior, I guess, right? It's hard to unlearn worry. It's really hard to unlearn anxiety, especially about certain things like money. Now that's an idea. A club building that has a private jet aesthetic. Get the private jet experience without leaving the ground. Oh, dude, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. An average PC today would have been a super PC 10 years ago. I think even more. I think an average PC today would be faster than any super PC, faster than the fastest PC you could build 10 years ago. Unless you're doing like large computers, like, you know, big IBM mainframes that have super redundant parts and run for 20 years at a time. I don't know. As they say, time is money. I got a Steam Deck, pretty happy with that, and I don't feel like the need to get an actual PC. Yeah, dude, it runs a lot of games. And you have to think like, okay, yeah, the fact that the Steam Deck can run Elden Ring at all, it's like, yeah, it's not running it at 60 frames per second. Yeah, but it runs 99% of the stuff on the Steam store and runs it at like 60 frames per second because old software still runs really good and it has more than enough hardware power to run older software. The fact is, like, a lot of this last gen of hardware, like, the average user just doesn't need that amount of graphical power to enjoy a game. You know, Team Fortress 2 runs on a potato and it's still pretty fun. You know, yeah. My Steam Deck, I can run Final Fantasy 14 on it and it runs really good. I'm shocked every time I run it. I'm like, wow, man, this game looks really good for a handheld. Like, it's a handheld MMO. Wild. Unbelievable. Would have been unbelievable 10 years ago. Nice to finally catch a stream. Thanks for being here. Here, we're a family from company workplace makes my eye twitch every time I hear it. Yeah. Companies are not family. I hate that language. When life goes wrong, they want to make sure you still make it to work. Yes. And they have the option to fire you whenever they feel like it. They're like, you know, our labor costs are too high. We're deciding to cut your department. Good luck. I thought we were family. Doesn't family care for each other? We are family. I'll give you a letter of recommendation for your next job. Have your desk cleared out by the end of the day. Thank you. Leave now, please. Oh, and then when they leave, it's like, why didn't you give us 2 weeks notice? It's like, do you give me 2 weeks notice when you lay me off? It's like, no, we don't have to. It's like, well, I don't have to give you 2 weeks notice when I quit either. I talked to a colleague in a different department who was a manager. Her attitude was she could always hire new talent, so she didn't care about employees. Yep, I've heard that. Heard that before too. Your job is to get your next job, is what a well-dressed stranger on an airplane told Scott Adams when Adams was young and starting out. It's a good thing. My dad used to say that too. You should always be thinking about the next job you're going to get. At Rockstar, people give you RAS if you get up to go home after you put in your minimum required work time. Cool. They can do it to my back. I don't give a shit if I work there, right? Hey, I can't believe you're walking out. It's like, I work harder and better than all of you. When you acquiesce, for me to acquiesce to you and stay here will not benefit you, nor will it benefit me. You know, when you're able to write as fast as I can write and as good as I can write, then you can complain about me not spending enough hours. Games are an incredible amount of work, both design and technical expertise mixed together. I found out that making a total conversion RPG with the Warcraft 3 editor. Oh, dude. You know what people used to do? You know, people did some incredible stuff with was Civilization 4. People did total conversion mods for Civ 4 that were like Warcraft RPGs, and they had tactical RPGs that ran just on your Civ 4 engine. It was amazing. But it is a lot of work. It could be good practice, though. What's cool about making mods, and I used to love like making maps and stuff for like Doom and Dark Forces and Marathon back in the 90s, is that you don't have to worry about all the other development stuff. The engine, basically, you don't have to worry about that stuff. You don't have to worry about... in fact, Marathon... Okay, I'm going to talk about how awesome Marathon was. Now, you could do most of this in Dark Forces as well, but Bungie was really cool and would just... when Marathon Infinity came out, they just shipped the tools they used to make the games. So you could have the map editor. You could edit the physics of Marathon. So everything in Marathon, people made total conversion Marathon stuff. People sold them as commercial games. There was one called There was a squad-based shooter in like 1997 called Damage Incorporated that ran on the Marathon 2 engine. It was just a total conversion Marathon 2 mod that they licensed and sold retail. Very cool that you were able to do that. But you could change out every graphic. You could program new monsters, and you could script those monsters however you wanted to. You could script their behavior with other monsters, so they would attack other monsters, or attack this guy, attack you, or be friendly to you. You could change the behavior of everything in the game. You could change the way the guns worked. You could change the way the guns looked. You could change every... the old way that like Macintosh in particular apps worked is they had these resource forks. So if you were good, you didn't really need like super technical expertise to make a total conversion mod. You just edited the resource forks and put in your own images or did stuff like that. You didn't need a lot of special tools for that. It was really, really easy. You'd use ResEdit for Mac OS 7. And you could go in and you could change out or add whatever you wanted to the graphics in the resource fork. So people would make mods. There was no crosshair in the original Marathon, which was really annoying. So first thing people did is they went in and said like, okay, here's a resource replacement that will add crosshairs to all your guns. So you could do stuff like that. You could change out the looks of aliens. You could make aliens look like whoever you wanted to. And people would do that. It was a lot of fun. So... is van living considered homelessness if the van had modifications to be a living space? I don't think so. I wouldn't call it that. When I think of homeless, I think of a person on the street versus a person living in a mobile home. I think a van is just a more mobile home. Right? You're living a home lifestyle. You have a place where you sleep. You have a home base. You have something that you own. And maybe you're working a job or something there, right? Yeah. I think Thoreau squatted at Walden Pond. Wealth is the gap between what you have and what you want. Even the Switch, potato as it is, runs a lot more than I expected it to be able to. Yeah. And I think that has to do with huge increases in power haven't yielded huge increases in graphical gain, both in terms of fidelity, but also especially in terms of aesthetic quality. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me find my Substack, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit. Games were more fun 20 years ago. I'll link this real quick. Such a shame Age of Conan came out unfinished. I love that game. I've seriously considered building a camper van. Stealth camping for free sounds exhilarating. It does sound fun. Like if I was single and alone, it might be fun. I know people that are like tech workers and live in mobile homes, you know? Elden Ring at 30 FPS is more than playable if my 400 hours put into it is any indication. Last great game I played is Conan Exiles. I never played that one. I should keep reading the Conan stories too. I recommend... I don't know if I have one here. There's... I'm going to get this version. There's 2 or 3 of these. Their publication order. Who publishes them? Del Rey. So this is a Del Rey paperback. It's like a print-on-demand paperback. It's pretty simple. You can get it on Amazon. They're fairly inexpensive, and they're illustrated. So you get a lot of great illustrations if you like illustrations. So I really recommend these. Illustrated, with fully illustrated throughout. The Coming of Conan the Cimmerian. The other one's called... I don't remember what the other one's called, but there's a second one, and maybe a third one. I have them somewhere too. But those are the ones I recommend. They're great. The new Doom lets you upload mods on demand. I found myself playing older games anyway. I'm about to jump back into Mass Effect again. There's a few new games that are really good, but most aren't worth playing in the first year of release. Yeah, you just wait till they work out the bugs, and then they release the special edition, which has all the DLC or whatever. You can see the Warcraft 3 mod I made if you Google Hive Workshop Cobalt Kingdom. The new API from Reforged is pretty powerful but buggy. Images are a bit of a scroll down. Yeah. Descent. Free Space. I like Descent. Such a shame. Yes. Not paying property taxes is based. Oh, nice. I have the mass market paperback ones, which are readable but don't have illustrations. So this one's good. I like this. This is one I recommend. There's also one that is Solomon Kane, and there's one that's Cole the Conqueror, all from Del Rey. And they do a great job with them. Fully illustrated, great illustrations. Just a really good book to have, and they're pretty inexpensive. So that's the version I recommend. No like El Sprague de Camp, like rewrites and garbage pastiche stuff. None of that. It's just publication stuff and stuff that wasn't published in the order that it came out in. Have you heard how the WHO declared a global emergency over monkeypox? I've not heard that. I'm not, as an individual, I'm not worried about monkeypox. And it's because I don't have a lifestyle that would make me worry about having monkeypox. Anyway, why were games better 20 years ago? I wrote this article on it. I'm going to go through all the reasons right now. I'll probably do another video on this too, but I thought I'd do it here where I could like respond to talking a little bit. So, were games better 20 years ago? I'm going to be more specific and say gaming as an activity was more fun 20 years ago. And if you're 40, you might remember this. If you're 20, you won't remember this. But I think it'll be worth checking out older games to see how much you enjoy them. Because I talk to a lot of young people that are like, I went and played KOTOR and wow, this game is so fun. It's like, it doesn't have to have the newest Chinese graphics to be a really fun, deep, and engaging experience. Older graphics can still be really fun, and even ones that are like bad, like PS1 graphics, can still produce a really fun game because the graphics are good enough. They're good enough for the game in a lot of cases. So number one reason is nostalgia. We have to be real that looking back on your youth, you're going to forget a lot of the bad things, and you're going to more clearly remember the good things, and you're going to remember them as even better than they were. Okay, so that's really, really common. We have to be real that some amount of rose-colored glasses are going to be in play when we're looking at things from 20 years ago. We're going to forget the times that we didn't enjoy gaming, and we're going to forget the times that we were bored. But I don't remember a single time that I was bored 20 years ago. I think it's a lot more than nostalgia. I think there's a lot more going on. But I do have nostalgia for those things because I remember being in a good place, playing a game. That's a good memory. I remember being in a bad place and having a game make me feel better. That's a good memory, right? So those are things that get kind of bound up in the way that we write and encapsulate memories to draw on later that are going to miscolor the experience. You just have to be real about that. Things felt new. When you're young, everything is new and interesting. When you get older, there's a lot less new and interesting stuff. It happens. All right. Besides nostalgia, the next big reason is there was far fewer distractions 20 years ago. No real comparison. So there was no social media in 2004. There wasn't even YouTube. So that matters. If you don't have your phone with you, your phone was like a very awkward call people flip phone and like text people slowly kind of phone. It wasn't like I have the whole internet here and I can just look up whatever I want and I'm bored, I'm going to look at TikTok. There was none of that. So way fewer distractions, no smart, no reason to post about what you're doing. No second monitor. So if you were playing World of Warcraft, chances are you had one monitor. It was a 4x3 CRT monitor in 2004, most likely for most people. And it, the only extra thing you had going on while playing World of Warcraft was probably music. You might listen to some music while you're playing. But you weren't watching YouTube because there was no YouTube. Now, everybody has two monitors. If they're playing WoW, they put YouTube on that other monitor. A while back, I switched to I have a big 4K monitor instead of like several, multi-monitor setup. I went to one 4K monitor. It's like having 4 HD monitors. It's very cool. I like it. One thing I realized is playing games in full screen on this, they're like, whoa, it looks good. I can't watch YouTube while I'm playing World of Warcraft. So what did I realize? I realized that World of Warcraft and Diablo 4 are boring. I realized that they're boring games, especially the modern versions of these. They're games that require very little thought from you as the player, very little interactivity. It's something to do while you're listening to YouTube, while you're watching a YouTube video or listening to a YouTube video. And then you have to think, is that YouTube video really so engaging that I need to be like clicking in a game? So you're combining two boring things to make one interesting activity. As soon as you get rid of that helper, that extra monitor, you're like, well, this game's boring. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to play a different game that's more interesting. So there was that. You also like couldn't look stuff up very easily. Like if I have a problem in a game now, I could pull up my phone and like internet, figure out who's saying stuff. Back in 2004, if you couldn't figure out a puzzle and you were in your living room away from your computer, how would you go look it up? You have to stop, put down your controller, walk over to your computer, start it up, wait for it to start up, maybe go to GameFAQs. You couldn't just Google this stuff and find an answer. There was no YouTube tutorials to show you like how to dodge around a Dark Souls boss or something. You just had to figure this kind of stuff out. So you have to go to GameFAQs, FAQs, game FAQs, and maybe someone would have written a guide on how to get past the boss. And you'd hope those instructions were good enough to help you. But you'd only do that if you were really sucking bad at some part of a game because it was just too much friction. So there was just way fewer distractions. It was really good. And when you would game, you didn't feel like you had to be doing anything else. Like I have a lot of fond memories. One of the reasons I have nostalgia for the PS2 startup sound was because when you heard that, you knew that you were going to spend like 1 to 2 hours having a really good time. You weren't checking social media. It was a deeper experience because of those fewer distractions. Whereas now gaming tends to be a much shallower experience. Whereas you got really into the game because you were really focused on it. There wasn't a bunch of other stuff, So that was the big benefit, is like fewer distractions. As we add distractions, the quality of our experience gaming goes down. It's not as fun because we're invoking a much shallower experience. You're also going to choose shallower experiences like Diablo 4 instead of a deeper experience. Like maybe Dark Souls or something, right? Dark Souls is a deep experience. It's a challenging experience. That's why people like it. If I go back and play Demon Souls for like the PS3 or the remake of Demon Souls is actually really good. Why is that a deeper experience? It's a deeper experience. Oh, is it deeper because it's challenging? Yeah, it makes you have to pay attention to the game. You have to really pay attention to what you're doing in the game. You can't zone out. You can't watch YouTube while you're doing it. You have to actually focus to finish it. That makes it a deeper and better experience, in my opinion. Another one is that there was a very special creative time in the early 2000s when it came to game development, where there was a huge amount of creativity. There was new technology that helped people to be creative. There was all that kind of stuff, but we hadn't yet had the like corporatization of the entire market and the entire medium. We hadn't had the AAA industry arise as this thing that had certain sets of certain kinds of practices that it always did. We didn't have every genre set in stone. People were still experimenting a lot in the PS2 era, even into the PS3 era. People were still coming out with new ideas for games. They were challenging genres. They were adding new things in. Games were gaining complexity. Games were gaining fidelity all the time. There was a lot more creativity that was going on. And the main thing is that the original game developers coming from like 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way into the 2000s, that crop of game developers would put things into games because they were fun or interesting. And they didn't really need to think about game theory. Like they didn't have to watch some badly animated YouTube video on game theory to know what they wanted to put in their game. They would just, this thing is cool, let's put it in our game. And they would just do that. That would just be in the game. The original World of Warcraft was full of stuff like this. There wasn't, they would throw in factions that weren't even complete because they thought they were cool. They're like, let's have a rogue faction over here in this hidden mansion, and we'll have a whole like set of rogue quests where you have to like disarm traps and stuff. It'll be fun. Even though they didn't really finish that off, they just put it in because they thought it would be cool. They weren't thinking like, oh, well, now for balance, we'll have to have a druid thing. Well, they already have a druid thing, but, we'll have to have a hunter thing and a this thing and a that thing, right? So they didn't think that way. They just put stuff in that they thought was cool, whether it was factions or silly jokes. Female armor, I said, they had bikini female armor because they just thought it was cool. They didn't really think about, will someone not like it? Will someone think it's sexist? Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball was a fun game with girls in bikinis, and no one, if your girlfriend cared about it, chances are she didn't really care that much about it. No one really cared, right? It was a lot more free for people to be creative and be weird and wacky. It was like the AA era. where a lot of games were being made with a lot of new variations on things that came before. And you just don't have that now. So that's another reason why the games were more interesting. The games themselves, they come across as more original because they were more experimental at the time. And now, say post 2007, everything falls into the same sort of repetition of this is how this kind of game genre is. This is how you make a game. Open world. Let's make an open world game. It's got to have gathering because Skyrim had gathering. It's got to have quest hubs because Far Cry 3 had those. It's got to have this, right? Every single game has this like list of features rather than a game that's full of fun things to do that a developer thought would be fun to do. If that makes any sense. Now everything is streamlined, which means they just take features out, reduce complexity, or it's, cinematic, which is like lots of cutscenes and very little gameplay. Not nearly as fun as it used to be. All right. Another reason, no microtransactions. What do you guys think about microtransactions? Okay. Microtransactions are probably the worst thing to happen to gaming in history. They have degraded the quality of the art form. They have harmed every game that they've been included in to varying degrees. Sometimes a little, only a little, sometimes a great amount. But DLC as a concept, and a concept which consumers are willing to interact with, has harmed games more than anything else I can think of in the history of the industry. It's technically harmed more than like the video game crash of the early 80s due to bad games, because the industry recovered from that, but there seems to be no push to get rid of DLC at all. I'm going to take a look at the chat real quick before I hop back on to DLC. Game facts. As a 22-year-old, I've been playing mostly older games for the past 5-ish years. 2 of my favorites are from Gaming Ground Zero, Oblivion and Persona 4. Both great. Love Persona 4. Fun fact, I used the 2005 Game Facts Guide to 100% Ace Combat 5 last year. Whoever it was that wrote it, I thank you. For me, it was GameCube startup sound. Yep. I've also been checking out even older stuff like Devil May Cry and Half-Life. Devil May Cry is great. Original Half-Life was a great experience. That was like revolutionary in the 90s. And it still holds up because the gameplay's good and it's got a cool little story that it pulls you through. And even though the graphics aren't great, the aesthetics represent what's going on well enough for you to understand. It's a gesture towards the real rather than looking real, which is what they try to do now. But that's enough. That's all you need for that. Whenever I log into Classic WoW, I'm reminded that it's a game that was made for people with lots of free time and who had no problem squandering it. I could get into that once. Now it's a chore. I don't think it's a chore at all, like last time I've played it. But it is a game that requires time, and it requires you to interact with other people. And as you've removed those conveniences, or as you've brought in those conveniences, you've removed what actually made the game fun in a big way. To me, it's a much bigger chore. To me, it's boring to log into World of Warcraft now. Let me log in and auto queue into an instance. Right. People will be jerks for 30 minutes. You will put up with frantic jerks so that you can get a piece of gear. I'm over it. It's okay, and it's okay that like games are not for me. Like I may not have enough free time to do Classic WoW or like certainly to raid in it, but that's okay. I actually think Classic WoW was a lot more respectful of your time than Modern WoW was. A lot more. Because you got a lot more done anytime you played, and it was a lot more fun. There was more stuff to find and explore. Of course, it was the first go-around. Things were actually novel. Things like that. It's so much more rewarding to play these games and seeing how much effort's put into the game. Unless I look something up, I have to phone in the other room when I read and play video games. I want things to have my full attention. It's a great way to approach anything. Right. The Devil May Cry collection on Switch has a multiplayer for Bloody Palace on Devil May Cry 3. We live in a world where the Switch port is the best version of Devil May Cry 3. Weird. I remember Final Fantasy X being notable for being the first Final Fantasy game with voice lines. Yeah. Jak and Daxter for the first large single instance map, etc. Yeah, I remember that too. You can make a good argument for the 6th console generation being the last great era of video games before they culturally died. Well, when you switched over to the 7th, like the PS3 era, you had a generation that started as physical media and ended as like basically digital. Because of that emphasis on digital distribution and online play, you lost a lot of the things that made the original stuff good. Do you think if the game developers of the PS1 to PS2 era had access to the same level of technology we have today, that they would have benefited and made even better stuff, or would it hinder them? I don't know. It's hard to say. Because stuff has gotten more complex too, so that increases costs. It's got to have an Ubisoft tower to reveal the map. Yep, they have that in the new Final Fantasy games. Got towers. Click the tower, see more of the map. Star Wars The Force Awakens is almost 10 years old. Perhaps it's time to grift again and pull some Star Wars hate again for a bit. Yeah, maybe. DLC is mostly itself fine. I'm still nostalgic for the PS2 console boot up sound. Me too. Okay. A game that doesn't respect my time isn't worth my time. There was microtransactions 20 years ago. They called them expansion packs. They just weren't pushed as hard. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, the expansion pack was it was as big as the original game, and it cost half as much. And there was one, and it came out, later, and you bought it, and it had a box. I might even have one sitting around here somewhere. Okay. So yes, DLC technically goes back into the 90s, and you could look at it as like there were free map packs and stuff for Doom and stuff like that. But it's not the same as charging for horse armor and splitting everything up into little extra worthless missions that you add on. So microtransactions are definitely the biggest negative thing. What ends up happening is that because of the nature of like digital online consoles, you push out a game, it's not finished. You release something as DLC. You make DLC part of the pre-order bonus, which means you're taking a piece of the game, maybe in like the you had an extra character you got with Dragon Age Origins if you pre-ordered the game, right? Shale. So like you take a piece of the game, cut it out, and then sell it to people as DLC. I don't like that. Whereas back before 2005 or whatever, you got a disc and the whole game was there. That was it. That was the game. If you have Final Fantasy X, you have the game. That's the game. Okay? And it stays the game forever versus complete edition, extra DLC. At first we were like, DLC is cool. If I really like a game, I could buy more content for it. And then we saw what that turned games into, and it was awful. So yes, DLC is actually the worst thing that's ever happened. And things break. It also punishes players for buying a game new, right? If you buy a game when it comes out, then what happens? They come out with DLC, and then they sell you a special edition that has all the DLC. It's like if you bought Final Fantasy 15 when it came out, you paid like $120 for the game because they had all these other little DLC packs that were like attached onto it. It probably wasn't that much. It's probably $100. Right? It was also a way to increase the cost of games without showing that on the sticker. It's like you have to buy all the DLC to do this. And also map packs, right? Call of Duty map packs, that's mandatory DLC for anybody that plays Call of Duty kind of competitively, or they want to be on the ladders or whatever they do. If you enjoy multiplayer Call of Duty, any DLC they come out with is not optional. You need to buy it. Same thing with like World of Warcraft. The DLC is not optional, at least in terms of expansion packs. Now their expansion packs are big, and when I think of DLC, I'm thinking more of like costumes. The costumes are optional, right? But the expansion pack's not as much. Right. Like if Blizzard started charging players $5 to have flying in a new expansion, that would be considered mandatory DLC. You can't compete without flying in a competitive game. It's a competitive game, so if you don't have flying, if you don't pay the $5 for flying, then you're stupid. You're retarded. Why would you do that? Everybody's gonna stomp you into the ground. They're gonna mine more stuff. They're gonna drop out of the sky and kill you in PvP. You have to buy flying. You have to buy flying, and you have to buy the best flying that's possible. It is not optional. This idea like, if you don't like flying, don't fly. No, flying existing in the game makes it worse. Anyone being able to fly makes the game worse. It's not just about me flying, it's about everybody being able to fly and what that does to the game. So anyway, yeah. 2004 games came on a disc, which means that if any game you bought before PS3, you just have the game. You just have it, man. You could just play it anytime you want. That's amazing. Brings me to the next one, which is physical media. Physical media was really good, and it actually made the gaming experience better in a bunch of ways that you don't really think about till we still have physical media, but it's almost nominal in some cases. Like you get a disc, you put it in, it downloads 100 gigabytes off the internet and then goes, thank you. You're like, what was on the disc? Was there anything on the disc? It's like the disc is just like verification that you paid for the game in a lot of cases. I think there was a scandal with some game where like the physical edition was just a Steam download code. There was no disc. It was a paper thing that just had a Steam download code inside the case. It's like, why would you buy this? Why would you even sell this? Well, back in the day, you could trade games. You could sell your games. You could buy new games. You could trade games with a friend. You could rent games still back in the 2000s because video rental was still around. So physical media let you do a bunch of things. It let you trade games. It made it so you didn't have to keep a big game library. If you didn't play a game anymore, maybe you'd sell it to GameStop and buy a new game. Maybe you'd give it to a friend. Maybe you'd sell it to a friend. Maybe you'd trade it to a friend for a different game that you wanted to play. None of our game libraries were big. They were just, a couple games, maybe 10 games. If you were really had a lot of games for like your PS2, you might have 20 games. Because you were always trading them around. It's like if you played Metal Gear Solid, whatever, Metal Gear Solid 2? If you played Metal Gear Solid 2 and you were done with it, you pretty much just got rid of it. I didn't know too many people who collected PS2 games. They were always trading them. That meant that you just could get access to games cheaper. You never had to worry about like whether the game was going to work or not, or if you're getting scammed or not. You never felt bad. Like if you bought a game and you didn't like it, you could recover your money by selling the game. You could rent a game to try it out before you bought it. So if you wanted to see what Grand Theft Auto 3 was like, you could go rent it and play it. And then if you wanted to, you could buy it later. Used copies were still around. Used copies are still around from the PS2 era. You can still buy used games, and they are awesome. Yeah. Yeah, do not let your friend borrow a game that you're not willing to give them forever. I learned this lesson when I was 7, and I let someone borrow Super Mario Brothers 3, and they would not give it back, and my dad had to go get it from the guy's house because he would not give me the game back. And my dad told me, don't ever lend anything to anyone again. I could take that really literally, but the truth is, like, you shouldn't lend things to people that you're not willing to give them because chances are you're going to have a hard time getting it back. Good Old Games somewhat compromises by letting you download your DRM free installers. Yeah. I once lent a kid some Pokemon in Gen 3, never got them back. I'm not bitter, I swear. Yep. Fallout 76 was just like a download code. You open it up and the paper falls out. It's like, go to Steam and put in this code. It's like, why did I pay for this? Put me on the shelf. I'm a tchotchke. I'm a bubble. Oh, this is an interesting one. Call of Duty map packs, another big problems that comes with it is that you can't play the DLC maps as the player base gets smaller and everyone clusters to the most popular base playlists. Well, all the people I knew who played Call of Duty, they always bought the map packs because like all of the competitive stuff was going to happen in the new maps. This was back in like 2010, 2011, right? So that like killed a lot of stuff. Was like you have to keep buying DLC, and then even then it fractures the player base. You have one set of player base who's playing new map pack stuff, and another player base who's not playing new map pack stuff. So it continues to fracture the player base. So there's fewer and fewer people to play with, and as time goes on, right, you have a yearly game. So if you're playing Call of Duty 4, which was Modern Warfare, the first Modern Warfare game, the next year they came out with another one. I don't remember which one came out after that. Then there's Black Ops. But like when everyone's playing Black Ops, the number of people playing Modern Warfare goes down and down and down to where like it's really hard to get a match after a while. There's no one playing. Versus at least with World of Warcraft, it keeps everybody in one game. I always said Call of Duty was kind of like, it was basically DLC as an entire game. It's just expansion packs, standalone expansion packs. MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries was insane. I remember MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. Ghost Bear's Legacy. It was huge. It was as big as the original game. There were games that had DLC locked away on the disc. Yes, it came with the DLC, but you had to pay them to access it. DLC, microtransactions. Yeah, there's loot boxes. That's another form, right? So microtransactions, loot boxes, backdoor gambling, season passes, digitization, physical discs to company-controlled online servers, distribution services, all equal cancer. I mean, we're all talking about, I'm focusing on DLC, but there's other microtransactions that go along with that, right? Which is like buying costumes, subscription services, loot boxes, gotcha pulls, all that stuff has had a bigger negative impact on games than anything else. Anyway, I definitely reminisce about physical media because it was really, really good. And it's not gone, but we've had a big decline in the quality and what the physical media actually is. Like if you have a physical copy of a new game for the PS5, are you going to be able to use that in 20 years to play the game when the servers are offline, when Sony's no longer updating their... Of course, they still are letting you download games for the PS3, so I don't know. Maybe they'll still have that in 20 years. I have no idea. Next reason, multiplayer was different. Multiplayer was way different 20 years ago. Multiplayer was still in the pre-online era for most genres. Online play happened in a couple of different kinds of games, and otherwise it was LAN, local area network play, or it was couch competitive play. Not a lot of couch co-op. That was there. You could do like Halo as couch co-op, but most of it was couch play. It was in-person multiplayer. You were sitting down with your friend playing Street Fighter. You were at the arcade with your friend playing Street Fighter or whatever it was going to be. You were sitting down with another person. So the console multiplayer experience was radically different prior to the Xbox 360 and the PS3 with all of their online stuff and Xbox Live. Radically different before that, where it was almost entirely in person. Very, very few console games used a modem to do things. There was like Phantasy Star for like the Dreamcast. There was Final Fantasy 11 was a full-size MMO for the PS2. Really incredible that they were able to do that. But for the most part, it was like you played Need for Speed with your friend at his house. You played Mario Kart next to your friend at his house or at your house, whatever, or GoldenEye. There was some co-op stuff like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles or Halo, but it was mostly like competitive stuff with each other. Once you hit online games, and even with online games, they were primarily things like MMOs, like World of Warcraft and games like that. Those were so different. The online environment, even once you got multiplayer games in like 360 and onward, was a totally different social environment than it was today. It was way less. It was way less locked down, way less Puritan, a lot more cussing, more racist. Anything goes. It was the Wild West of the internet. It was a lot more fun place to be. People were racist on Xbox Live because they thought, I'm sorry, my dogs are going crazy. No. Shh. No, dog, stop. He saw a raccoon or something. Anyway. I'm actually going to take a short break and see what the heck's up with the dogs. I'll be right back. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Dogs barking at nothing. Usual stuff. In Halo 3, we regularly played 4-man split screen on Xbox Live. Good times, no Discord, lots of Mountain Dew. The internet became soy. Yeah, so the internet used to be a place you could escape to be yourself. Now, it was like an escape from the world. Now it's just more of the world, and the world is more annoying than ever. So people were racist on Xbox Live because they couldn't ever say those things in real life. You couldn't say them at your university. You couldn't say them anywhere. So, yeah, people were mega harsh on Call of Duty because that's where they could be that. They couldn't ever say those words or express themselves outside of that environment. That was a big relief valve. Same thing in World of Warcraft. You could say anything in World of Warcraft and get away with it, and it was fine. It was an escape. And the other thing about say World of Warcraft or EverQuest is that you were your character in a sense that there was this really strong separation between the you that people saw and the online you. Being online was pseudonymous for 99% of people. They never used their real name. You just didn't do it. Why would you do that? Why would you want to just be yourself somewhere? You wouldn't, right? Now, I knew my guildies in a lot of cases. I knew them in real life, or I met them through World of Warcraft. We'd hang out. I knew people that got married meeting their spouse on World of Warcraft. Pretty rare, though. Okay? Most of the time, 99% of the people on the server, they just knew you as your character name. That's what they knew you as. And that was great because you could really be yourself, not attached to your name, as weird as that sounds, because you didn't have all of the obligations of real life and all the pretensions of, say, the university system that kept you from saying and doing the things that you felt were like appropriate. You couldn't be yourself in real life. And now you can't be yourself in real life, and you can't be yourself online. Neither one. You can never be your real self. You got to go out into the woods, you and your buddy turn off your phones, and then you start telling your racist jokes, right? That's the way that you can like express impolite opinions or even jokes. You have to go far away from technology or civilization. Technology used to give you access to that. Wasn't that way now. So I knew from a young age that the world was cruel and tyrannical, but I was not prepared for how dumb and gay it was. Yeah, the music's playing. That's intentional. That's fine. We can let it play. Just let it play. Let it play, baby. It's my music. I don't care. Cartoony action adventure platformers with stylized fantastical worlds and characters, wacky humor, and fun play mechanics. You'll never see that dominate the mainstream of video gaming ever again. I don't know if I'd say ever, but you're probably not going to see that again. You're not going to see wacky writing. You're not going to see jokes. You're not going to see that kind of stuff. The fact that Mortal Kombat, a game that was built on like gore and boobs, says like we have to cover up the girls because that's not realistic, is just kind of encapsulates everything that's changed about what was there. So yeah, the online experience used to be way better 20 years ago. Way, way, way more fun. Now a modern MMO is hardly a multiplayer game. It's like I saw this thing with the new World of Warcraft where they were actively marketing toward people that they would never have to interact with another person. You can do all of this solo. Now I see this and I'm like, what's the point of this game? Make a solo game. Make a single player game. People like those. People like playing them. It's because the player base is so anxious about other people and like the player base in World of Warcraft is so toxic, no one wants to play with anyone else. And everybody's so anxious about talking to other people now that they don't want to play with anybody else. They want to have a World of Warcraft solo experience. You can solo experience Final Fantasy XIV too. It's very sad to me. But that's how it is, right? It's like you log in, you auto queue, you press a button, and it throws you into a group with a bunch of strangers who could just say the worst things in the world to you with no consequence in World of Warcraft. Whereas in vanilla, like if you were a jerk to someone, that could actually mean that you don't ever get into groups again on that server. You actually could get blacklisted on a World of Warcraft server by being a jerk. Totally different. It was so different in 2004. It's really in 2005. It's so hard to describe to people who weren't there. It's like people were nice to each other. People were awesome to each other, but they were also dicks. But if you were a dick, there were maybe some consequences to that. It's way, way different. Last one was the technology. The technology was very novel. There was still a lot of novelty and a lot of push for originality with hardware design and with accessories in addition to game design. So the technology felt novel, and it was novel for the time. If we go back, say, like the Wii, you still had the Wii, right? About 20 years ago, a little bit less than 20 years ago. You had Nintendo that was still like, we're going to do a completely different control scheme than what we've done. People were still willing to do that. Like the controller as an input device wasn't so old that you couldn't just throw that out the window and have the Wii. That stuff's not there anymore. There was all kinds of wacky accessories for the PS3. There's one called the Wonder Book it was a Harry Potter tie-in thing. You actually played with this little magic wand, and you would like wave it over a book, and there was a camera, and it would put you like in Hogwarts on the TV. So there was wacky stuff that they did that they just tried out. A lot more willingness to just try things out and see what was going to happen, what people were going to do, and what people were going to buy. So you had PlayStation Move, you had the Kinect, you had the Wii, you had the DS with touch screens. Back before there were back before there was an iPhone, you had the DS. DS was actually very influential on mobile game design. It had things like Cookie Mama, where it's like lots of touch stuff, right? That was actually pretty new at the time. You had lots of weird technological ideas that came out. I'm going to plug my Game Boy Advance into my GameCube, and they'll be able to like select plays in Madden with it, or I'll be able to select spells in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Like these things will interface together and work together and create these really unique experiences. We're going to have a Game Boy Advance player on there. There was just so many wild and wacky things that happened, and they pretty much all went away with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. In fact, Microsoft wanted to ship the Xbox One with the Kinect, like mandatory Kinect. And the result was no one wanted it. People just didn't buy it. They're like, no, I want my Call of Duty box, nothing else. I don't want any accessories. I don't want any kind of other experience other than I'm holding my controller and I'm playing Call of Duty. That's what players wanted. They wanted the core experience. And so the core experience, once that became dominant, the novelty of a lot of those things kind of fell away. And I'm not saying a lot of that novelty was always good. Like a lot of it maybe was stupid, but it was there. It was novel. And so a lot of that went away, and there stopped being any push to do novelty. Like a PS4, even though it's radically different hardware-wise from a PS3, it's basically a PS3 but better in terms of its function. And the PS5 is just PS4 but better. Xbox Series X is Xbox One but better, which is itself Xbox 360 but better. So we've had 3 generations of console that are just like, we're just doing the same thing but better. Nintendo Switch has been successful because it's like, hey, it's a PS4, but it's portable and also worse, right? But it's just a game playing thing, right? It's a thing that plays games with the interface that you're used to. There's a little bit more innovation on Nintendo side still. The 3DS has gone by the wayside. That was very innovative, but overall the innovation for the technology has declined. It used to feel like you could always expect something new and better right around the corner. Now it's like it's better, but not in a significant way, and it's more expensive. You know, the only kind of new peripheral that's still around is the VR, right? Like the PSVR 2 is just a better PSVR, which came out in like 2016 or something. So it's old, right? It's an older experience. And even then, it's like they don't know what to do with it. People don't want to buy this. They don't want to put out games for it, right? Like no one wants to interact with the weird peripheral, because why would you? Back in the day, you had all kinds of dumb crap for the NES. You had the light gun, you had the Rob the Robot, you had the U-Force thing where you waved your hands, the Power Glove. You had so much more innovation in gaming just 20 years ago and before. Let's say 2010 and earlier was like innovation and doing novel weird stuff was what the gaming industry was about in a big way. That's gone. Now it's about this core experience. And of course, people are becoming less interested because the core experience, it's especially with the corporatization of it, it's just generating variations on a theme. people feel like they've seen it all before, and to a large degree, they have. You know, a lot of good Castlevania games on DS. Yes, there was like Aria of was it Aria of Sorrow? There was Portrait of Ruin. That one was really hard. I remember that one being hard. And then Order of Ecclesia. That one was pretty tough, and that one was cool. That was the girl with like the tattoo on her back. I found a PSP in a thrift store, cracked it, and installed the SNES emulator and a bunch of games. I need to go to more thrift stores to find this old stuff, you know? I never had a DS or 3DS until my second deployment. Kind of nice way to pass the time between watches. Hell yeah. Yeah, 3DS is still really good to own, I think. I play solo in my MMO a lot, but now I actually have static groups for advanced content or guild missions. It's a lot of fun having regulars to interact with. I agree. You want friends. You want to feel like you can rely on people. You don't want people to like immediately kick you from a group because you did some mechanic slightly wrong, you know, which is what you get with modern World of Warcraft. If you made a visual novel, what type of soundtrack would it have? I don't know. Whatever would fit, I guess. I can do lots of this stuff, like ambient stuff. We could do classical guitar. We could do lots of things. You know, I can do a lot of that stuff. I gave free summons for low-level parties to dungeons when I was bored. Got named Summon Guy on my server. Yep, you gotta have a warlock. Warlocks were like super valuable. You felt valuable in World of Warcraft. Oh, this got a warlock. It's awesome. He can summon. If someone doesn't get to the dungeon, he can summon them. That's great. You know, that's so great. And we could use him. You know, it's like gotta have warlocks. It's like, oh, we got a priest. You know, he could mind control this, or he could fear someone. He can do fear ward. Priests are really cool. Oh, we got a hunter. He could do Eyes of the Beast. You know. And he could do different things. He could use Eagle Eye to take screenshots for us. The DS allowed me to play one of my favorite video games of all time, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. For that alone, the DS will always have a special place in my heart. My DS still works. It's great. Norminess is a mutation of the tribe dynamic. We expect you to behave this way is a good dynamic when there's 30 of you, but when applied to the entire internet, it makes everything beige. Yeah, I agree. Steam Deck may not have necessarily been innovative. Handheld PCs have been around for a long time, but they executed it very well. Yeah, that's the thing, is like if you just do it really good, it can be an innovation on its own by the fact that lots of people adopted it. And then it becomes, you know, it becomes a thing that is innovative simply because lots of people bought into it finally. Whatever VR headset becomes really popular, people are going to be like, it's very innovative. It probably wasn't. It probably did like one thing really well that was hanging people up, like it was lighter, like it was really fun to put on instead of annoying to put on, and then boom, that'll be the one to have. Sony will forever have to hold the L of not coming out with a new PSP. The PSP was ahead of its time, yet Sony did nothing beyond the Vita to evolve it. The Vita is still good. It's still a really good system, but you're right. Like, why? What they should have done is when the Vita didn't sell well, and they blamed it on smartphones. They're like, smartphones. It's just like people aren't going to buy a Vita because they have a smartphone. I'm like, make the Vita a smartphone. Turn your Vita. It's like, but it's too big. This is as big as a PlayStation Vita is. What? Right, but back then the iPhone was really little. I think I have an original iPhone. Hold on. I think I have it in my drawer here. Because I got one out. If not, I have an iPhone 5 somewhere in here too. I think I put it away. Did I put it away? I think I did. Shoot. My drawers are super messy right now. But anyway, if I hold up like a modern phone to an iPhone 3, it's like this little square. So they didn't turn the Vita into a phone. It had 3G capabilities built in. If they maybe could have even done it with a firmware update or something, right? Turn it into a phone, and people would have just had that instead of an Android phone. The App Store was really new. Like, people would have abandoned the bad App Store to play the PS Vita, you know? And then they said, well, we don't want to get in on the mobile stuff because I'm trying to remember, they had some weird thing about piracy with that too. Anyway. Essentially, video games and gaming technology have gotten so complex that it's not even recognizable anymore. Do you think gaming will get even more complex and less simplistic in the future? I think we're reaching like a leveling out point where the increase in the complexity of the technology is not yielding better outputs, right? Like PS5 games look better than PS4 games to enthusiasts, but to normies, they look at it and they're like, it's not really any better, right? Normies, they could see a little bit of a difference, but they're like, I don't need to pay $500 for that, especially if it still comes out on my PS4. If it comes out on my PS4, I'll just keep playing it on that. So the extra money and the extra power is not delivering more beautiful games. The other thing is, like, just because it can be more higher fidelity doesn't mean it's more beautiful to look at. Because if you're not making a beautiful thing to look at, it won't be any more pleasure to look at it. This is actually why I like Square Enix games still, is that there's very few companies, and I think maybe the Korean and Chinese companies are why they're killing it right now, is they just make games that are pretty to look at. Whereas the Western devs are like, we needed to be gritty and realistic, and like Square Enix is like, here's Cloud and his harem of tens, right? Or like, not a harem, I guess there's like two girls, but like, here's Cloud with these two hot girls, right? Here's like the hot looking guy. Everybody's a 10. Everybody's a 10 in a Square Enix game. Why can't Western guys make their characters look good? Why do you have to have ugly elves in Dragon Age Inquisition? Why can't you have an attractive character? It's not realistic. I don't want realistic. Realistic is outside my door. I want something that's beautiful. Okay? When I go into a church and I see an icon of the Virgin Mary with Jesus, there's probably one behind me. Right? Boom, there's one over there, right? But when I go to a church and I see a big icon of that, I don't think, you know what, that's not realistic. Heads don't look like that. Jesus' head is too small. No. You think about what the aesthetic points to. You think about it being beautiful. You don't look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and be like, those aren't realistic body types. It's feminism. Feminism poisons people's minds and makes you think, we gotta have people that look like every woman should be a 6 out of 10. That's not art. Video games are art, which is why we make it look like not art. Would you say the PS5 and whatever the Xbox equivalent is the most failed video game generation of all time? Not nearly as failed as like the Atari 5200 or 5400. That's pretty failed. That little mid-generation there before the NES. I wouldn't call it failed at all, actually. But what I think people are picking up on is that gaming in general is less exciting than it was 10 years ago. Less exciting than it was 20 years ago, for sure. I wouldn't call the PS5 a failure at all. People were paying buku money to get PS5s. And PS5 is still selling well. And for a while, it was the fastest selling console that they had come out with. People are like, where are the games? There's more games for PS5 than... There's so many PS5 games. There's more games for PS5 than like there was for PS3, for sure. In terms of the same amount of window. And the fact that the PS5 can play all the PS4 games and things like that. And plays them better. They're like better frame rate and all that crap. I think it's really that people, when they're asking where are the games for the PS5, they mean where are the fun games that I'm really excited to play, because there aren't any. That's valid, right? So the failure's not on the hardware. It's not that the PS5 hardware is bad. I can complain about the controller having stick drift, right? And the controllers fail at an abnormally high rate compared to the PS4 controller. That's a legitimate criticism, and one that I just don't see why it has to be that way. But the problem is people aren't excited to play the games. The games come out. They're big budget, expensive games. They've never looked better. I mean, in terms of graphical fidelity, they've never looked better. But my big point about like the old technology is like things looked beautiful. Final Fantasy 12 looks beautiful on a PS2, right? Because it's showing beautiful objects. It's beautifully well designed areas, wonderful aesthetics. Mass Effect 1 looks beautiful, even with the reused boxes everywhere. because it's showing things that are meant to look beautiful. They're artistically designed. Whereas now it's like Last of Us 2. It's just a ruined wasteland of nothing in high fidelity. That's not interesting to me. It's not beautiful. That's not art to me. So yeah, the failure is in the software side. And I think that's why it's why the big boys are buying up studios. Microsoft is buying studios because it understands that the way to make money is no longer in hardware. You cannot sell consumers on the newest, best hardware. What you need to do is control the software side, because people are not going to shell down a lot of money for the new hardware. They're just not. So you need to transition to a different phase where like you're occasionally selling upgraded hardware within the same constraints, right? So it becomes more like a PC, and you're just selling those upgrades, and then you're really trying to make money on the software side. You tell me, like, are there games you're really excited for on the PS5? The only one I remember being really excited for was Final Fantasy 16. And it was a good game. I think people shed on it. I don't know. It was a really good game. So was the newer Final Fantasy 7 game. Both of those Square Enix games were top-notch. They were beautiful to look at. Great gameplay. Just amazing. Amazing. Way better, like, graphical fidelity than the previous generation. And they were aesthetically great, too. But I don't know, gamers aren't excited to run home and play them the way they were, like maybe Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. We got to be real. And they remade Demon Souls. It was a really good remake, but why? It's not I think people are more excited for Elden Ring. But Elden Ring's out on every platform, so a lot of people are asking, why don't I just build a PC? And my counter to that is that I remember 4 years ago when people were saying PC gaming is dead because you can't build a PC. If you told me Facebook secretly wants to prevent VR from being popular, I might believe it. Oh, Yuffie. Well, the thing is, Yuffie's underaged, so if you're a teenager, there you go. But adult women for the rest of us, okay? Which one do you want? Do you want the hot, the hot, lithe, super demure, sweet Northern European girl, or do you want the absolutely stacked Italian? Both good choices. Both good choices. Or do you want the ditzy Japanese girl? In theory, if everybody around me were 10s, that'd be great. Yeah. Hey, why doesn't this fictional creature look more like me? It's got to look like me. Zoe. Hey, we know everything we need to know about you if you're calling yourself Zoe. I don't know why people push so hard for realism in games. Yeah. If I wanted realism, I wouldn't be playing video games, right? I have realism outside. Yes, what's realistic is going out in my yard and picking up sticks when it's 95 degrees outside. That's realistic. I'd kill 6 out of 10. I'd kill for Western game characters to look that good. We're rocking 3s and 4s. I'm more generous than that. I think anything below a 5, you're looking at like pretty significant ugliness. And once you get to like 3, you're like there's like 3's like tragically ugly. And anything lower than that, it's like burn victim, like somebody has been deformed somehow that like absolutely ruins their ability to look human. Like 2 or 1 would be like werewolf, affliction, or like Elephant Man or something. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag came out in 2013. The new pirate games look like trash compared to it. There you go. It's been 11 years. People used to be so excited to play those Assassin's Creed games. Now it's like, oh, I have an open world Assassin's Creed game. It's Far Cry Assassin's Creed. It's the genre called Ubisoft games. I don't want to play those. They did the new Final Fantasy VII, like, hey, now you get to play an Ubisoft game. I'm like, can I have a corridor game again? Can we go back to Final Fantasy 13 where you're running through a corridor and just killing bosses and stuff? Because that was fun. I want the bosses and the cutscenes back. That's why I liked Final Fantasy 16 actually. Because I'm like, this is nothing but cutscenes and bosses. Don't threaten me with a good time. 5 PS5 controllers. I have had 3 get stick drift. 1 that I think I might be able to fix because it doesn't always have it, and then 2 that were really bad. 1 that was still under warranty, and I had to send it back. So after that, I haven't had problems with them. But I have PS4 controllers from launch. I have 2 PS4 launch controllers, have never developed stick drift. The rubber on the sticks gets worn off. It's just like plastic, no stick drift. I don't have stick drift on my Wii U controllers. I don't have stick drift on PS2 controllers. I don't have stick drift on any PS3 controllers. I have never had stick drift before in my life except on a PS5 controller. Or actually, that's not true. I had all my Switch controllers have stick drift. All the Switch Joy-Cons, every single one got stick drift. Replace those sticks, those get stick drift. Replace those sticks again. Stick drift, right? I don't know where they're getting these sticks, but they're all drifting. Whereas like controllers made in 1999 and used for 7,000 hours never get stick drift. What was better? I don't know. My GameCube games don't have stick drift, or my GameCube controllers have never had stick drift in 20 years. And I still like use them. When do you think art styles of photorealism and hyperrealism took over the art formation of the video game industry? And when did beautiful cartoony stylization and cel shading go away? All right, 2 questions. Let's answer the first one. It's always been there since PS1. PS1 was when we are going for photorealism. Like that T-Rex tech demo. We want it to look real. That was the promise. That was the hope of VR, was that it would look like real life. So 1990, let's say 1995. Okay? 1995 is when photorealism became the goal. When did beautiful cartoony stylization and cel shading go away? Well, it came into style, and it never went away. Genshin Impact is still a huge game. It uses cel shading and cartoony graphics. So, as far as American AAA, it mostly went away. It was never really there. But in other game dev environments, yeah, it's still there. I'm actually out of time. I'm way over time. I actually need to kill this. We've been streaming for over 2 hours. Is it about fantasy versus socialist realism? Honestly, I like Jessie the most in Final Fantasy VII R. Everybody loved her. She was hot. And then she was like super flirty, and then she died. It's perfect. You want to make people absolutely love that character and then kill her to like make it real. I think that was actually really... I think the Final Fantasy VII remake, the first one they did, was better than the original game, mostly because it was just Midgar, and they really fleshed out those characters and lent a lot of impact and weight to their death, including Jessie. The writing was better as a result. Not a popular opinion among people in my generation, but we had better realization of the aesthetics, better gameplay than the original. The original is kind of lower on the RPG gameplay scale for me, but I've played a lot of RPGs over the years, so that's why. It's just a little simple. It's okay. It's not bad. It's a good game still. The original's a great game. So, but I like the remake better because it's like we got the best part of the game, which was Midgar, was always the best part of the original game, and we didn't have the other stuff, and we just had a lot deeper look at it. A lot more fun. Go look at the characters from the Concord game. Oh, I'm not going to put them on stream. They're ugly. Right? The game is gonna crash, and it's already crashing and burning. They did a beta stress test and no one would log in to play it. No one's gonna play this game because why would you want to look at ugly characters? I don't. I say that, and then I know people played Horde. People played Horde. They liked looking at ugly characters, but at least those were like monsters, and not like here's a person that's just not attractive. But would you say Final Fantasy VII R game is better gameplay-wise than OG? Absolutely, I would. Yeah, I will say it. And it's not because the original had bad gameplay, but even in terms of RPG gameplay, it was pretty shallow compared to its predecessors. It was shallower than Final Fantasy VI and much shallower than Final Fantasy V, shallower than Final Fantasy III. Not really shallower than Final Fantasy IV, if I'm being honest. At least if we're looking at the Super Nintendo version of the game, the original, like, American version. But it's just not that good an RPG. And I think moving it to an action RPG space, that's a controversial decision. But I liked that action RPG gameplay a lot. I thought it was very fun. It was very fun to watch. I liked that it was... I liked the animations. I liked everything about it. I also liked the Final Fantasy 13 combat system quite a bit. I get that a lot of people didn't like it. Because early on, it's almost like... What, do you just press auto attack? Like, yeah. When you look into the history of it, they had to simplify some things because things got out of control with complexity later in the game without some of those things. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, it's not, and I don't think Final Fantasy VII, the OG, is a bad game. I think it's a really good game. I wrote about it in one of my books. But if I'm being really completely honest about everything with it, the best part of it was Disc 1 by a wide margin, in my opinion, as far as story, aesthetics, gameplay, everything. And so Final Fantasy VII has the best part of the story, better gameplay, better graphics. I like it better. I like it better than the original. And I don't care if that's a popular opinion or not. How about 8 or 9? I like 9. I haven't really finished 8, so that's still on the bucket list. Everybody hated Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 8 when it came out, so I never played it till way later. I have it, but I never finished it. So Final Fantasy 9 though is one of my favorite games. Would you say that and it is, Final Fantasy 9 is a little more complex than 7 because you have like just more mechanics that you can do, like the eating mechanic and that kind of stuff. Would you say that we're experiencing, that's a blue mage mechanic when I'm thinking about it, in contemporary games now is hyper-realism where there are ugly mocap renders of people everywhere now? That's a good way of putting it. I haven't seen that term before, but I like that. I like that idea. Yeah. Motion captured ugly actors lit poorly to make them even uglier. Right? You use ray tracing. So this is one of the problems with ray tracing you don't think about. It's like realistic lighting doesn't make people look good. That's why in movies they don't use realistic lighting. They use all kinds of auxiliary lighting to make actors look good. So when we're just trying to make characters look good, do you see what I mean? Like the ray tracing can actually work against that. My back aches just looking at horde characters and WoW. Loktar, oh God, what is it you wish? Break their bones. Yeah. I think so. I think a lot of people that grew up with Final Fantasy VII are not going to like the remakes because they have a lot of attachment to the way those original games were, and they're not wrong for having that attachment. They're not bad for it, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I just don't have that same attachment. Maybe because I played earlier Final Fantasy games, and so Final Fantasy VII wasn't ever one of my favorites from the get-go. I still think it's a good game, but I think the remakes, they're just better. So I take it you like Final Fantasy VII R Part 1 and Part 2 so far? Yeah. There's a lot of things about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that I don't like this open world thing. It basically just kind of wastes your time. I feel like it could have been better, but at the same time, if they'd added more to the open world, it would have been even more distracting. So as it is now, you can go deep with the open world exploration stuff and finding all the little camps, or you can do what I do, which is just do as little as possible to get to the next area. At this point, or what I did, I guess I started by I got to do everything. That's just kind of who I am, and then I'm like, no, let's get the show on the road, guys. I do this with Final Fantasy 14 too, where I'm like, I'll level up 3 classes at once because it's more efficient. I can explain why it's efficient, but basically, I don't need to get deep into it. At a certain point, you're like, no, I just need to focus on a main and just level that one up because it's not that hard to go back. And if I want to play Dark Knight, I can just spam dungeons with Dark Knight and level up really fast. Or whatever class you want to play. If you want to play a tank, dude, leveling in Final Fantasy 14 is like the easiest thing. You just spam queue dungeons and you get like ridiculous experience. Or if you want to be mega efficient, you just do 3 dungeons a day for all the bonuses, and then just do that every day, and then you're leveled up almost. And you just do that on the side. It's really fast. Final Fantasy 14 dungeons, especially now, are really fast. Like, people run through those things fast. So if you want to do healer or tank, easy mode. Easy to level up. Just do those dungeons. Would you have loved for the Chrono series to actually continue in parallel with Final Fantasy? Also, what are your thoughts on the Chrono games? I like them. Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger. They're good. I got a game that I've been playing with my son called Trinity Trigger. It's very similar to like some of the East games and Chrono Trigger. Pretty fun. Yeah, I would like to see more of them, but it's okay that there's just those, because they can never ruin something that they don't try to continue. You can't ruin Chrono Trigger. It's already good. Easy to level with healer and tank. So easy. You know. But people do whatever they want to do. I see people leveling Dark Knight by running around doing fates. I'm like, dude, you are wasting your time, man. Unless you are just bone tired of doing dungeons, or you just feel like I'm so bad at playing a tank. In which case, why are you leveling one, right? Hop in the dungeon, get a bunch of stuff. Say like, healer, I'm going to gather this entire dungeon up. Heal me. Just go max speed if you can. You know what I'm saying? 3 classes at once. Use a summoner and a scholar, don't you? No, my classes are White Mage, Black Mage, and Dark Knight. I also have like a high level Samurai and a high level Bard. I had to level Bard up so that I could get the music. So I could actually play, and I had like a whole, I haven't set it up in a while, but you get a key to MIDI thing, and you can perform for people on your keyboard, like on your piano. I can even do it on my Ableton Push. Like, I could perform songs on the Ableton Push. It just doesn't have all the expression. It's just, button presses, but you get the idea. They're probably queued. Why would you? There's no way you're doing Fates queued as a tank. DPS, yeah, that's the way to do it. You queue up, do some Fates, maybe whatever quests you haven't done in that area, and then yeah, when it pops, take it. I haven't played since Heaven's Ward. I have a Paladin, Warrior, Scholar, and Monk. Cool. What's your favorite 3D platformer of the 6th generation? Console exclusive or across all consoles? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember what ones there were that I liked. Played a lot of RPGs. And what constitutes a platformer? Because I'm not a big fan of Mario Sunshine. Just as an example. Astrologian. These are cool. Anyway, yeah, I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 again. Just casually leveling up. Seeing what I want to see. It's like my thing I do before I go to sleep right now. Helps me disengage. I forgot to talk about this. So this is something I've done the past week or two while there's been no videos. Is I focused entirely on writing articles. I'm like, I'm going to write as many articles as I can till I'm like burned out on writing articles to post on my blog, so that there's just content coming out on the Substack every single week. There's just content coming out. And so then that's off of my mental plate. It's out of my RAM. It's out of my memory. Then I can focus on, I'm going to do a bunch of videos. Then I can really focus on, like, I need to finish up a couple books maybe, or I don't decide what the next like creative phase is. Like, do I want to actually dig into game dev? When do I feel satisfied walking away from books for a time? Because you gotta know that like learning game development as well as developing a game is going to take a lot of time. And it's going to take time away from publishing books. Now I feel like it's a good time to take a break from publishing books because the publishing industry sucks right now. It is a really bad business to be in. It's very helter-skelter. There's no easy way to make money and no set way to make the money. And the ways that that exist to make money are not really my favorite right now. So it's actually a good time to take a break from it and try something else and let the back catalog do some work and continue selling the back catalog with content. I have a lot of books, you know. I don't need to be coming out with a new book every month to game the Amazon algorithm. I can just sell the other 20 books that I've already written, and that's probably good, right? But I want to finish up the Moonsong. There's like 3 more Moonsong books I want to revise and then publish. And then, King Upper, got to put that one out. Got to move Bright Children off of Kindle Vela and put it out as a real book for people to read. I want to do that too. So I got a big list of book stuff I need to do, but I wanted to get like articles written. Boom, we're focusing on articles. Those are written, those are out. You know, those will be like scheduled, ready to publish. Then we can just do a bunch of video content stuff on those topics. That's stuff that is like, it's not current event kind of stuff. So it's not like, oh, what happened on Saturday? I don't need to talk about that. It's just like, you know, why were games more fun 20 years ago? Kind of grand pattern kind of stuff that I'll be talking about. And then I can move into finishing this book stuff up, and then I don't know what's next, right? But it's better to just, for me, like I'm too scatterbrained. I've been too scatterbrained this year. It's like I got to do an article, and I got to do a video, and I got to do a improv piece for the music channel, which I'm going to go ahead and link the music channel. Link the music channel right here. Got to get on the music channel. Maybe I just want to record an album. Get that done. Yeah, game dev can seem very daunting. It seems daunting to me. That's why I'm like, I want to kind of clear my palette off so I'm not distracted by other things. Does AI make video game programming easier? I don't know yet. I guess we'll find that. We'll find out by doing. A lot of people don't like Mario Sunshine. I've heard things not too great about it, but I'm just very interested. It's okay. It's really my least favorite 3D Mario game. Mario Galaxy is a lot of fun, but Mario Sunshine, I just don't like it. The camera controls are weird. I don't know. It's just not my favorite. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. I've been going for a long time. It's 9 o'clock. I got to quit and get the kids to bed. So I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in and watching. I'm going to link all the stuff. I'm going to link the Substack again, new Substack article. I appreciate everybody coming in and talking to me and keeping it so interesting. Patreon. Let me link the Patreon. Hop on the Patreon. You get free copies of the live rights and all kinds of other stuff. Plus, you get on the Discord. You can tell me what to talk about on the shows. Next week, we're going to have Brian Niemeyer on, I think. The 21st. And he's got a new book coming out. So it should be cool. Should be cool. All right. All right. I will see you all next time. Have a great day. Is there anything else? Yeah. I'm working hard on getting lots of stuff done. So if there's a week or two where there's no videos, it's because I'm really focusing hard on something else. And that's what I've been doing. It's just focusing on writing articles. A lot of those will just get turned into videos like what I did now. So we'll see. Have a great one, and I'll see you all next time.